Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the REMINGTOM podcast. We are live. The NFL playoffs are underway. Playoffs, that's right. It's wild card weekend. We've been going toe-to-toe with Brady all season, so make no mistake, we're not going to stop just because the games are entering the playoffs. Packers-Eagles is about to kick off, but make no mistake, the NBA is giving us a couple nice little games to throw on in the background as well, too. We've got a competitive Nuggets Mavs matchup, which is a problem for the Nuggets because it's competitive and there's no Doncic. And let me see, there might actually be no Kyrie as well too. I know Dinwiddie is maybe playing like Kyrie tonight, but is Kyrie actually out there? Dinwiddie's 1 for 6. Never mind. Sorry, Kyrie. Yeah, no Kyrie. Najee Marshall 6 for 7, 14 points. Derek Lively, also 6 for 7. Klay Thompson, 4 for 6 from 317. So, you get Klay Thompson firing away. Maybe things will get a little interesting. Oh, do we have to stand people? It's the national anthem. Maybe we shouldn't have said anything. Should have just focused on the Nuggets-Mavs game. But also, well, Knicks-Bucks is third quarter right now. And the Knicks we saw the Thunder get revenge from the Cavs on the Knicks, and now the Knicks are getting revenge from the Thunder on the Bucks. It's just a vicious cycle, people. You know how it goes. Hurt teams, and the Knicks just need to get their revenge on somebody. So they're up by, 25? Almost 30 points, about halfway through the third quarter. Halftime in Kings Bulls as well, too. I mean, that's a fun slate of games, people. Make no mistake. I'm having a good time watching basketball. Playoff football is underway. I don't know why we should be in, a chipper playoff mood because the Broncos, unfortunately, did get beat by the Bills in the game before. Unfortunately, wasn't necessarily that competitive either by the end of the game. But, young team, first year, Bo Nix, Sean Payton, that first year of that combination. So there's a lot to work from, a lot to be excited for going into the future, obviously. But, man, this guy's lighting it up on the saxophone. Shout out. Philly's going to love a good national anthem performance. They are ready to go. Make no mistake. And, of course, as they remind us on the broadcast, too, about the Red Cross, we shouldn't need the broadcast to remind us to send our thoughts and prayers to the people out in L.A., of course, still dealing with the wildfires. I think they're still burning. I was seeing a stat today that a couple of the fires were like below 15% containment. And I was like, geez. But yeah, I guess, unfortunately the thoughts and prayers are, I guess, not unfortunately prayers, of course, we have a lot of faith in those, but, just in terms of what we can do physically, pause, just kind of limited here in the Midwest. But for right now, we keep them in the front of our minds. But as we try to focus, of course, on a fun Sunday afternoon of sports and some interesting matchups as well, too. But, I mean, this is, of course, about are we at the halfway mark now? We've had 3 games, and then there's 2 games after this, so I guess, uneven amount or whatever. But, yeah, we're halfway through the wild card round of the playoffs. Couple games last night, and of course, like we said, Bills Broncos earlier. Texans Chargers was the first game to start off, chat. Unfortunately, RIP our guy Harbaugh's season. The season came to an end a little bit earlier than maybe we would have thought, because we did have, I think this is one of those unfortunate matchups. I think at the beginning of the season, if you would have said Chargers Texans first round, I think that would have been a bummer for the bigger picture, because I think, again, going into the season, I would have had stock in those 2 teams as a sleeper team. And I think they obviously are sleeper teams now, but the top of the AFC at this point feels so strong. And I mean, I guess we're immediately contradicting ourselves from what we said on Friday, because, I mean, I did look at this slate of games and go, okay, I wouldn't be totally surprised if there was an upset really either way. Again, even the Broncos line moved in the Broncos' favor. It opened at 8.5, and then I think it was at 7.5 by the end of the game. So not too much of a difference. And ultimately, I think 7.5. The Broncos didn't even get to 7.5 points in the game overall. So they definitely didn't cover. But, people were definitely optimistic. But, like, even right now, especially after the way the top teams have dominated, I don't know if, we're going to regret saying this going into the game. I guess we'll find out, chat. Stay tuned. But the Philly -5.5 right now, I'm staring at this Philly team at home, the vibes, and especially the game plans as well that we've seen from some of these teams. Like we've seen, of course, I guess we haven't seen all the favorites win because I guess the Texans weren't the favorite. So, what we said Friday, obviously all the favorites, somebody's going to get upset, but that's of course like the most low-key version of the upset because they're technically the higher seed and they're actually at home as well. And, it's still Stroud versus Herbert at the end of the day, which, maybe the seasons that they had, and again, the teams that they were on, maybe we're putting Herbert above Stroud going into the game. But, maybe after the game, Stroud's back up in front of Herbert. But either way, that's still like a pretty close quarterback matchup going into it. So that's the one where that's probably the most even matchup, honestly. I guess if you want to go maybe like, we're going to get what? Commanders Falcons tonight. Packers Eagles is kind of interesting too, of course. But Vikings Rams is a little bit interesting. You never know what Sean McVay and Stafford could potentially have cooked up. But the 4-5 matchup, of course, was going to be a tough one. And outside of that, Bills Ravens took care of business. And both definitely on the strength of their run games as well, too, which they are definitely running teams, but definitely on the strength of their running backs more so than, more so than the quarterbacks like Lamar and Josh Allen. Both had really good games to start the wild card. Oh, no way. Green Bay, have they fumbled the opening kickoff? Right away. Yeah, maybe we should have scooped up that 5.5. The problem is it's playoff football, and the fact that we have had such kind of a chalk slate so far. It's like, okay, maybe are we going to get chaos now that we're going to enter the NFC portion? Oh, man, who made the tackle? Lit him up. Textbook chat. Wow. Oh, well, maybe slightly illegal as well, too. Definitely leading with the crown of the helmet, straight square on the head. But did the runner or the kick returner lower his head a little bit as well too? But anyways, the defender leading with the crown of the helmet probably should have been flagged. But you still don't see that not get flagged very often. So love to see a good old school play to start playoff football. Pause this statement, chat, but like a good tackle from the front, again, you never see that not penalized anymore. It's hard to just do like a wrap up solid fundamental tackle. And again, I mean, this was not fundamentals, but shout out letting them play right away. So very unfortunate for Packers fans. I was going to say the one thing that the Packers may have in their advantage going into this game, because the Love confidence as well, too, maybe especially this time last year, what's been the 12-month sort of confidence cycle for Jordan Love so far? Because he was peaking at this time last season, 9-6 on the year overall. Yeah, last year he was 4,100 yards. This year, 3,300 yards. Played 2 less games, 25 touchdowns, same amount of picks. In less games, yeah, too. So that's not ideal. But again, we saw him really start to pick up steam at the end of the season, but it feels like he's kind of gone the opposite way a little bit. And I guess I don't know if he had this necessarily the strongest start to the year. I think it's been kind of a up, down, up. Okay, he has managed to stay interception free again. So, like last season, he threw all 11 picks in the first half of the season. and stayed turnover free in the back half. But, you know, you start getting into that cold weather, grinded out football. Yeah, like he had the game against Minnesota in week 4, he threw 54 passes, 32, 33, 39. And then, you know, you move to the last 7 games, he's 24 passes a game. 187 yards, you know, a touchdown and a half as well, too. So it's not like he was lighting it up with the same numbers as he was at the end of last year. Versus, again, you look at 11 picks through the first 8 games. Uh-oh, Barkley's breaking free, chat. First down. Into the red zone, inside the 15. Of course, a turnover on the opening possession is going to be brutal, but yeah, this could probably get ugly right away, unfortunately. But Love was at 260 for yards for the first 8. 2 touchdowns, but yeah, an interception and a half for that stretch as well. So I don't know. Is it the bag? He got the 5-year bag, and now he feels pretty good. Doesn't have the same chip on his shoulder. And speaking of the Mavs-Nuggets game, the third quarter Mavs, they've completely destroyed the Nuggets in this third quarter. They're now up by 20, make it 17 as Peyton Watson hits the shot. Klay Thompson crosses the 25-point threshold. Wow, a vintage Klay Thompson night. Who would have thought? New Year resolution Klay. 2025. He decided to make some shots. Shout out. Who knows? The double Ewing theory for the Mavs. What was their record with Kyrie without Doncic? Because they've been kind of feisty without Kyrie, without Doncic. Double. Without them both. The Jaden Hardy minutes? But I don't know. There's been something about the Klay thing as well, too. Do you need to do a quick Klay Thompson sidebar? Oh, Eagles touchdown. We were focusing on the Jaden Hardy three-pointer. The missed Jaden Hardy three-pointer. Hurts, was that Brown, chat? Who just scored? Is anybody playing playoff fantasy? Oh, Jahan Dotson, shout out. Back of the end zone, shakes the defender. Jalen Hurts scrambling around. But quickly, to look up Klay Thompson's numbers. And, you know, you cook the Spurs a couple times, you can definitely get your season inflated in my mind. But I think he's picking it up as of recently. 38% from 3 on the season. Okay. Klay, I see you're back a little bit. I mean, that is definitely, I think, up from last year where he was out on the Warriors. He might have been just a little bit under that at, like, what, 37 or something? But okay, 0 for 4 in the last game for Klay. But before that, yeah, he was playing well. So 38% of, again, in the last 5 games because that 0 for 4 definitely cancels out these first 4 good ones. But he was 44% through those 4 games. 15 points a game. 2.5 turnovers. Same amount of turnovers as assists is not necessarily ideal. And they were, 1 and 4 in that stretch. So it really was just this 21. It was this LA victory that we're focusing on. That they have not necessarily been cooking as of late. Let's see here. Wow, they've been... Okay, back-to-back wins, though, beat Portland, LA. So having some success on the West Coast, but what are they, 3-5 in their last 8 games? Maybe a little worse than that. No, okay, yeah, they were on a winning stretch there. Okay, so as you would suspect, chat, the Doncic-Kyrie injuries have definitely affected the team. Make no mistake. You want those guys back. But Klay, yeah, over the last 8 games, 35%. 12 a game. So he's definitely still up and down this year, but we'll need to get this game definitely filtered into the stats quickly before he gets a couple of games added on top of this, because this is one of the good performances. It'll make the numbers go up. Pause. This is like a stats Blue Chew performance right here, stat. Let's see where he's at right now. 6 for 9. Whoa! Speaking of Blue Chew, shout out. Klay Thompson knows what's up. He knows the deal. Najee Marshall up to... Oh, I'm looking at the plus minus. 16 points, plus 26. PJ Washington. Oh, you guys 4 points, plus 23 though. So shout out. Grimes, he had a good game the other night against the Lakers as well, but not necessarily following it up this evening. Oh, we're not live anymore. Let's catch up. What happened? Let's get back. Strother's in the game. We need to make sure we're locking in on the Strother minutes. I mean, he's going to continue to play more for this Nuggets team. Make no mistake. Not because they don't have anybody, but because he's actually good. He feels like one of the few guys. There'll be times, I mean, in games like this, where you're like, they're down 20, but Strother's like kind of shooting the ball nicely. 1 for 4 tonight, chap. But make no mistake, again, they just now are down 20. I guess they've cut it back to 12. So as long as Jokic is in the game, they'll only be losing by a little bit. But once the lead gets out of control, Strother, that's when he'll start hitting a couple threes. No, make no mistake. He'll hit a couple of shots in the fourth quarter. Down 25, 6 minutes left. Be like, oh, Strother, he's kind of nice. Kind of like when I see him. But can we get some first quarter, some third quarter, some second quarter buckets, some fourth quarter down 2 to take the lead with 3 minutes, something? Back to 10 though, thank goodness. We can't have 2 disastrous games here. But maybe the Packers again, LaFleur. I think the quarterback advantage I think is going to Jalen Hurts as of right now. Same, I mean the Eagles just have a better roster. They're kind of the sneaky. They're the only other team in the NFC that I think people have picked besides the Lions. It's basically just everybody assuming it's going to be one of those 2 teams. I mean, they're the two most talented teams. It probably will be. Oh, man. Jordan Love on the first pass almost threw it right to the defender. He just kind of looks up from out under his helmet like, what just happened? Way over the top of Wicks. No Watson as well either for the Packers. So, I mean, does Love kind of go with Watson? Do we need IT to pull up some Jordan Love with and without Watson splits? Because we know what Hurts numbers look like with and without A.J. Brown. And, oh, there's Strother for 3. Oh, man. He bricked a 3. Strother, we're trying to gas you up here. Prove us right a little bit. At least get rim. But, you could just make the case that it was early in the season for Jalen Hurts as well, more so than just full-on injuries, though we're not going to take away from A.J. Brown, I believe, his injuries. But as he got back and healthier, that's when we started seeing Hurts. That's when we started seeing the offense start to turn around, and that's even with the way Barkley was playing earlier in the year as well. Barkley's had a good season start to finish. Even when the Eagles were struggling, it's not like Barkley hasn't had a couple of games, but I don't think Barkley's had that stretch of the season where he was necessarily, playing off. But again, we didn't have him in fantasy, so I wasn't tracking the week to week like that. 3rd and 8, Love rolling out. It's complete chaos. There's nobody even. I think he was throwing to the punter standing on the sideline. Oh no, the Packers. I was going to give him the coaching advantage. That's what I was going to give him. I was going to say LaFleur over Sirianni. But maybe the Eagles staff is better. Moore and Fangio. They brought in Fangio as the DC, right? I'm not crazy. Kellen Moore is definitely the offensive coordinator via the Chargers, via the Cowboys. But I think they brought in Vic Fangio as the DC. And, of course, Sirianni, head coach. Patricia, is he back on staff? Yeah, Fangio, DC. Clint Hurt, senior defensive assistant. Jason Michael, tight ends coach. listed as a notable assistant, I guess. Shout out to the tight end coach over in Philly. Really got that position group on lockdown, I guess. But yeah, maybe you do give the whole staff to the Eagles then. The game plan from top to bottom is just going to be better, more well-rounded. They have the guys. Actually, the ground floor guys. Now that LaFleur is not a game planning type coach. Like he's in there scheming up for sure. But with what Moore and Fangio could provide on both sides in contrast with Sirianni gives you, because I think Sirianni, though he was of course a coordinator himself, maybe goes a little bit more into manager type as well. What kind of coordinator was Tomlin? Was he a special teams, or did they hire him as like a positional coach? Was that like the infamous, like we've seen since Mayo, the amount of linebacker coaches that just, there seems to be some kind of pipeline for linebacker coaches to, oh yeah, that's right. He had that one season in Minnesota as the defensive coordinator. I always forget about that with Tomlin. I always forget about that. And then you just like go look a picture of like '06 Tomlin in a Vikings jacket. Because again, you get some guys where, yes, you can definitely be established as that's your team as the coach, but you also get like Belichick, for example. Like, yes, of course Belichick is the Patriots head coach. I mean, unless he just rips off a couple titles at North Carolina, who knows? But like he's the Patriots guy. Yeah, the Browns is definitely a part of his history as well too. But the Giants years are in there as well. Unfortunately for Belichick's an interesting case because the Giants were the one team that were able to take him down in the Super Bowl multiple times. So unfortunately for like modern history, they kind of go down more so as rivals, but they should also be a part of like the Belichick timeline, in the mix. But your coordinator run can be like a part of your legacy as well, potentially. Unless, of course, you're well, other coaches, but Tomlin had such a short run as the DC in Minnesota, and obviously, great move, but it just gets totally forgotten that. And shout out to Brad Childress, I guess for bringing him on staff, the 6-10 Vikings. And I wish I could remember more from that '06 Vikings year to really pinpoint like how that defense looked in a 6-10 season, to just like remember what people were saying. I'm again not questioning it. Obviously, Tomlin's one of the best coaches in the league. They definitely made the right move, but I would just like to have seen how well that defense on the 6-10. But I mean, you can picture it as well too. Like there could be a coordinator on a mid team where you go, okay, I kind of like at least what he's doing with the unit. I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head this year, but I feel like, we went through the coordinators and it is from, but like, I guess I was going to say Houston for this season. What were they, like a 9-win team? And, Bobby Slowick maybe is going to get some love again for head coaching jobs, though I feel like his name has fallen off. I mean, as the Texans have a little bit, but who's their defensive coordinator? Is DeMeco Ryans just full on the defensive coach? Maybe he gets in the mix as well too. And they did just win a playoff game again as well. So, the hype around that team is definitely built back a little bit now that they're, still able to at least win later in the season. But, what were we saying there, Chad? I forget where we were going off on that. But, anyways, you can see, I guess, the aspects of a mid team with a coordinator to to see why they could be like a great coach going forward. And of course, a guy like Slowick had, you're not necessarily hiring him for what he did this year. It'd be more for what he did last year. Okay, Murray with the 3-pointer. They've cut it back to 5. And the Eagles are in a 3rd down. So if the Packers get a stop, did Calcaterra drop it? Oh, he was just short of the sticks. Okay, yeah, 3rd and 5. If the Packers get a stop here, we'll definitely lock back in. But it is 4th quarter as well for this Mavs-Nuggets game. So crunch time people. The witching hour? Where did Scott Hansen go? I guess we don't even need to compete with Brady anymore because Scott Hansen, I mean, I guess we'll have to do what we have to do, chat. I was going to say, we can't just, like, sub ourselves in for Scott Hansen. That's, like, hallowed ground that, only he occupies. He's such a singular force in what he does in the media. Because I just can't think of another sport even that has something that, obviously, that I can think, like, the NBA has, I think Greenberg's the one that hosts the Crunch Time. And he does a great job with it. It's fun to throw on every now and then. But, the other thing with the League Pass, too, is you can watch all the individual games. Like, I don't have Sunday tickets, so usually I guess, shout out to the well-funded out there, where you can have Red Zone and Sunday ticket. But oftentimes, the Red Zone is the substitution for the Sunday ticket. But with League Pass, you kind of get that. You can just kind of, you just watch all the games. You get the Sunday ticket aspect there, so you don't necessarily need Crunch Time in the same way, even though I guess Crunch Time is maybe free on the NBA app. I'm not sure, because, again, we're paying for League Pass, so I'm just like, okay, this better be in our plan. But, yeah, like, he does a good job there. I'm sure baseball has a whip around coverage like hockey. I know they were thinking about starting one with hockey, actually. I remember hearing some reports about that one. I think it was hockey, maybe baseball. But, the other sports now, with the success, of course, of what Scott Hansen is doing with Red Zone and what that has evolved into, they're going to want to replicate that. But, like, how far away are we from a guy even getting to a place where he could compete with Hansen just on a reputation level? Like, how not to write anybody off, of course. You could have a super just high energy, explosive guy that just makes waves right away in some scene for one of these things. But just the time that Scott Hansen has put in, like, he would still be the newcomer on the scene. Like, Hansen would still be the legacy guy. So, I guess we're just here to be here, and if it happens to, feel like a little Scott Hansen replacement, then I guess we'll just take that as a compliment. But I guess we can't necessarily say that we're stepping in for the man. But continues to crush it. Can't wait again, of course, for Red Zone to be back. And again, shout out to Greenberg, man. He's doing a great job. I hope it's still Greenberg doing Crunch Time. Hopefully the man didn't get replaced. But he wouldn't, of course. Greenberg does a great job. I don't think he's ever been replaced for anything. But, he's always such the Greenberg, like, doing, like, the top 10 highlights and stuff. Like, he's a fun guy, make no mistake. Greenberg, fun guy status. There you go. You heard it right here. But we're just saying that with the whip around specific coverage, like, Hansen's just got that on lockdown. The Hansen people, make no mistake, they know how to, like, carve out a specific corner in the media. You've got Chris Hansen, who, make no mistake, is definitely the one guy with the show based around catching child predators. I guess not anymore, because I'm pretty sure that's like a YouTube trend, maybe TikTok. I don't know. We're not really, of course, the side of YouTube we're on is just like stand-up comedy, hip-hop, and sports highlights. Like, we're not into the vloggy, pranky, evolving into the TV showy type stuff. Though, of course, we're trying to do our due diligence and check it out a little. We're trying not to be old men. Be like, hey, what's Mr. Beast up to these days? He's making how many people walk again? But, I remember hearing something about that being kind of a big deal for a while, was the people were just everybody was out there. And, I guess, go for it, shout out. We got to get him off the streets. But the act of people filming it and putting it out there for content was starting to become a popular trend as well. Maybe not necessarily people just doing the good deed, but, it's like Chris Hansen is the guy for that. The Hansens, maybe the most original people in the media. Chris and Scott Hansen, the Hansen family, shout out. I know there's a Hansen in our town that we know that's like a local DJ. So, I mean, there's just Hansens all over the place that are making waves, doing big things over the airwaves, TV waves. Okay, and the Packers are able to... Did they get a stop? No, it's 2nd and 8 for Philly. Okay. Oh, no. Is it 2nd and 8 for Green Bay? So they did get a stop. They did get the ball back. But Jenkins is walking off right now, so they're going to be down their tackle. And again, I feel like we would probably give the line matchup to the Philly Eagles. At least the peak version of the Eagles defensive line. It's one of the most talented units in the league. I mean, there's no denying that. So you're going to give them that matchup. And, with no Christian Watson as well, too, definitely a more favorable matchup for still a young secondary. Like, obviously a secondary that's been playing well, but playoff football, more intense atmosphere. Maybe especially that first game in there for some... Oh, excuse us, chat. For some of the young guys, this is, I think, maybe a good game for them to ease into a little bit. Love's first completion. I guess he's only thrown 3 passes, but feels like, we're halfway into the quarter at this point. Maybe it's been long enough. Pause. Whoa. Right away. Craziness, chat. Okay, 3rd and 2. Love back to pass. Wide open, and he's getting the guys, chat. He's hitting his guys, which, I mean, again, going back to that Chargers-Texans game, which was the first game of the day, or I guess of the wildcard weekend. Herbert, I feel like Herbert, like, I don't know if Love is going to be one of, I guess, we're going to have to see how the game plays out here to see what potential storylines are going to, be made of the Jordan Love potential performance. But, he's definitely a guy that maybe going into the list, going into the, I guess, playoffs, might have already been, at least on the watch list, I guess is what I'm trying to say, for where the storylines could be for question marks for this team and their quarterback. And I guess not that it would be what would they do with Jordan Love, but again, just having that confidence shaken a little bit from maybe where you thought your guy was at one point in the standing in the league. Oh, did I just mess up the camera, chat? Oh, geez, I'm clicking buttons. I'm trying to pull up the... Oh, what is this? Chat, that's not the right part. Oh, look at that. We're back. We're back in. Okay. Shout out. IT, I guess, just decides to step away. It's not even halftime yet, IT, and they're already walking out and taking a break. Just let me just press buttons over here. This is why we have you, IT. To make sure that this stuff's going correctly. See, there it goes again. Unbelievable. IT, what are we doing? Okay. I think we'll get back on track at some point here. Can we get it? Oh, there we go, people. Shout out. Okay, still 7-0. Still at least a close game in the mix. But, yeah, Herbert, definitely a guy that... I mean, I got to be honest. Going into the playoffs, I was thinking about Herbert as... I'm just thinking about ranking quarterbacks and ranking the players, which, make no mistake, we will still do at some point here before or just right after the end of the season. I was going to do it at the end of... I was going to do last week for the Week 18 just because, again, we know the quarterbacks that we were getting. So it's like, there's not going to be a ton to talk about. But I don't know. I just like to wait through the playoffs, obviously, to rank the players. Not, of course, that every player you're going to rank is playing in the playoffs. But there's just going to be a couple of performances either way that either, extra solidify a ranking or move a guy way up. Or, obviously, like we're saying, maybe, of course, in Herbert might have unfortunately be an example of this, in his case, maybe might move him down a little bit because I would have had him, again, maybe top 5 in the league going into the game. And, there's still some of the overall numbers that you would look at and go, he's not maybe producing the stats of a top 5 quarterback, but, he was the most efficient quarterback in the league. Yeah, I guess he had the lowest interception percentage, if that's, at least 1 point in his case for his efficiency this year. 66% completion percentage, 3,800 yards, modest, 23 touchdowns. But, keeping the offense moving. And I guess, you look into some of the advanced stats, well, too, the 44 success rate as the lowest of his career. See, chat, we were so focused on the efficiency that we just weren't willing to dive in and look at maybe the full Justin Herbert picture. But, He was, and of course you can just chalk it up to maybe a bad game as well too. But is that now what, 2 playoff games where you have to unfortunately maybe put Herbert into bad game territory? And I guess looking at his numbers for the last playoff game that he played back in 22 as well, he was 25 for 43, 273 and a touchdown. No picks in that game. Sacked 3 times. Oh, wait, Klay Thompson, shot clock buzzer. Oh, not able to get it to go. Sorry, the Mavs announcers were getting excited. I was like, what's going on? But, yeah, and that was the game as well, too, where they had that massive lead against the Jaguars. Or at least I think it was it massive? Do we need to get a girl on the pod to tell us how big this lead was? But I think it was, what, like 21, 24 points? Like, I think it would go into massive territory, chat. Make no mistake. I think that's what we would have to say. And unfortunately, the Jaguars were able to get the win. And Trevor, I think we would still even have, like, Herbert above Lawrence at this point in their careers, even though maybe Lawrence, after, that point in the playoffs, maybe there was a case that you would take Lawrence over Herbert. Like, even still after this playoff loss, like, I'm still probably clearly taking Herbert over Lawrence. But, I have to now reconsider. There's a couple of playoff games where Herbert just, that Chargers team was not able to, unfortunately, put that Jags team away back in 22. And now I'm thinking I'm going to have to go back and rewatch those highlights as well, too, because, I was going to start going full Stephen A on Justin Herbert and be like, Herbert sucked in that game. Herbert was terrible. He wasn't able to make a play at the end of the game. But, I got to be honest. I just don't remember. So make no mistake. We're just going to have to go back and rewatch, I guess, 2022 Chargers versus Jags. I'm sure they got, condensed replay on NFL Plus? Quick, tight, 38. Get in and out. But just to give us a refresher on what the Justin Herbert playoff performances look like. Because it's still, for the Herbert truthers, Barkley, he's on the loose. He can't be contained. He's getting him to midfield. I guess I don't know where he started that run at, but we looked over. He was juking like 6 guys. Okay, so what? Yeah, he got 20, 25 on that? Just a modest little gain for Barkley. Definitely not a 2,000-yard gain, but at least he's adding to his total. But, at least for the Herbert truthers, they're still going to be at least making the case that this is still only 2 playoff games. Herbert's still, at least in the peak of his powers. I get maybe the Manning thing gets brought back up into it as well at some point in his career. Maybe he needs another actual, like you could say, maybe just looking at the numbers from that playoff game against the Jags, like maybe he wasn't necessarily bad in that game, and this is actually the first bad playoff performance that Herbert has had. But regardless, it's still 2 opponents that, still 2 games that could go either way, but opponents that are not, they're beatable opponents for sure. And Herbert was definitely missing passes in this game. There was pressure. We know the Houston defense and that defensive line can play. Like Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, that's obviously a tough group to go up against. And the Chargers offensive line is probably not, maybe skill-wise, with Alt going forward and Slater, they have foundational pieces. But them getting pushed around a little bit by the Texans line is not necessarily surprising. But, Herbert was still sailing throws. I know that first pick was definitely the one straight over the top of receiver. The pick 6 was kind of off the hands of the receiver, so it was hard to necessarily blame him for that one. But he missed a couple of throws in the just incompletions as well late in the game in some big moments where, again, for a guy that was top 5, it wasn't the type of performance where I looked at him and thought he was helpless and there was nothing that he can do. I would look at my takeaway from that game was, Herbert. And you look at the 4 picks. It's an easy takeaway. Make no mistake. I guess it's not hot take corner to start the pod, but, Herbert had to play better in that game for the Chargers to win. And I guess we could have, it was me ranking the things that I thought were going to happen, that necessarily wouldn't have been one of them because the defense still the Houston offense wasn't necessarily terrifying in this one. Nico Collins played well. Joe Mixon again played well. The overall numbers are going to look good, but it was those defensive, and there was a special teams return as well too. Yeah, they had the extra point return that made it 25-23, plus the pick six. I guess, did they even have... They didn't even have an offensive touchdown until 3. Oh, I guess they scored the first touchdown of the game with Nico Collins. Shout out our boy, of course. The one guy in the Texans we do like is the former Michigan player. Are there any other former Michigan guys that I'm not thinking about on Houston? But Nico, of course, is the number one guy. Is he the number one University of Michigan alum in the league right now? He has to be. I guess it's him and Hutch, right? Unfortunately, Hutch is out. So active in the playoffs, he's got to be the number one alum, unless we're counting Brady as the announcer. Like, I don't know, Brandon Graham. I'm gonna go somebody maybe with some veteran status, but yeah, maybe Nico. But either way, they didn't score an offensive touchdown again after that until the final possession. It was 25-12 at that point. Maybe Chargers a little deflated, and still, Stroud getting his team into field goal territory. Like, make no mistake, it's the recipe for how they've won all season. But it was not, again, like you looked at this game and thought that the Texans were unbeatable and that they had the perfect game plan to stop the Chargers. Like, I thought Herbert was missing throws in this game, and Herbert now is developing a little bit of a playoff history. And I don't know what the Herbert contract situation is. Make no mistake, teams are losing from the playoffs, so we're just going to be looking up contracts. It's what happens. Your team loses. How long do we have to deal with this guy? Herbert's out. Wait a second. How long do we have Herbert for? Can we trade him? But, last year when the Bears had that number one overall pick, and maybe even when, the Panthers, but just like number one overall pick, Caleb Williams was, of course, we know the hype cycle of how that narrative played out for him leading up into the draft, and how intense that hype had gotten up into some point. And, we had the conversations on here about the quarterbacks in the league that you would trade that number one pick for, obviously knowing that you're going to take Caleb Williams in that spot. And the idea of, especially maybe getting a guy as potentially talented on a rookie contract as well, too. Like, what could that look like in contrast to some other players? And Herbert was one of those guys that was at least brought up in conversation. And it was one of those hot takey type guys. For sure. I mean, yeah, for sure, hot takey. Like, it's like, you're definitely fine with Herbert going forward. But, maybe you get a couple. Like, Herbert's got some status. Maybe there's an asset or two more that you have to throw in there. Thicken it up a little bit. But you get, again, the rookie contract, the cap flexibility. Like, maybe there is an interesting case there to be made. Like, maybe Herbert is still in that case. It's still in that tier of the league where that's as high as you would go. But with the efficiency that he was playing with this year, that was actually a thought I was having at, various points of the year, was like, I can't believe that take was even possible at one point. Like, Herbert is definitely, of course, at this point, so much better than Caleb Williams, and maybe that's not totally fair because of where those guys are at in their career. But, maybe it was just like a sneaky back of the mind thing where it was like, would Caleb Williams ever play this well? Again, not to doubt the guy. Like, I still have the Caleb Williams stock, but there would just be a safety in having a guy like Herbert at your position. But is that what we have to do? Is Herbert going to go into that safety net sort of status? Like, I hate to say, like, is Herbert going to be like a Dak Prescott? But these are two playoff losses now, again, against some teams that, you're going to have to beat some teams to go on a run anyways. It's not like, what are they, Notre Dame? Just going to slip into a championship? I guess this is the NFL, people. Philly field goal, 10-0 first quarter. Oh, okay. I get it. A slow burn, grinded out victory, Philly. I see that's your recipe for success, of course. But shout out to the Ringer playoff ranking, because they've got the little build your own model where you can just rank the quarterbacks. I think this is the only tool, only position group that you can rank in like the entire NFL. Like, I'm sure there's one behind a paywall somewhere. And I guess there's fantasy rankings as well, too. So maybe we should pull up like a fantasy draft board and, rank players that way. But still, it's just like, who doesn't want to just open up a list of top all the quarterbacks in the league and just like rank them against each other. I mean, it's like maybe this is the Spotify influence. It probably is, but it's like that playlist slider type model. For those of you guys that haven't seen the QB rankings, should I actually switch the web? Let me see if I can switch the web page over because I have it pulled up on a different web page here. But let me see. Just to show you what it, just in case you guys haven't seen it, just to show you what it looks like. So yeah, you've got the slider playoff, or not playoff, quarterback rankings that I guess you can move around based on playoff performance. But like, see, yeah, if you wanted to take Herbert after today, or I guess after last night's game and go, oh, he sucks, like, let's just do this with him, pause. Like, so you can drag him way down the list. But yeah, I think this is like the only thing where you can just like pull up a list of guys. Ringer, get a receiver rankings. Where's your running back rankings? And I don't even know if they have this on the, do they have this on the fantasy sliders? Maybe they need to put this on the fantasy thing where we can create our own poll. I don't know. But yeah, I guess to start this, do we need to refresh? Do they have Herbert over Burrow? And maybe if you're just, again, talking with the efficiency, and the Chargers actually were a playoff team, like, you know, against Burrow, like, Herbert was actually getting wins. Like, you could actually make the case in that favor that way. But, you know, Burrow's overall playoff status, like, Burrow's, again, been to a Super Bowl. Like, I feel like, and shout out to the Nuggets. Again, the Nuggets side railing us. They've completely swung this back on the Mavs, and now they're up 9. The Jokic-Westbrook combination, if I wasn't too distracted, I think took over this game. Let's see. Westbrook, 19 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists. I mean, Westbrook, people, is helping carry the Nuggets. Make no mistake, he's the second best player on the Nuggets this year. And maybe it's just the Westbrook, the way he asserts himself, pause, he can't be less than like the second best player at any given time. But he's helping him out this year, chat. Make no mistake, that's kind of working out for him. But unfortunately, they're not getting the Murray coinciding performances, you know, game to game. Everybody's sort of pulling it together. Yeah, like Porter tonight, 1 for 8. Yeah, and Murray's 2 for 6 from 3. So he's at least making his twos a little bit better. But regardless, you need him to be hitting from the outside. But, and I guess I don't want to just like do a full quarterback playoff ranking, because like I said, we'll do a positional ranking extravaganza. Because make no mistake, I mean, at the end of the day, this is a pod about making lists and about looking at rankings and reacting to rankings and drafting and list making. Make no mistake, at the end of the day, that's the core of the show. But I mean, you know, like Herbert versus Goff is like a really interesting conversation. Like they're, you know, they have him 11, and they still have like Dak and Geno up on this list. You know, Dak, of course, injured, not able to finish the season. But is Goff, like, how 30 is Goff? Is he 30? Is he 28? He is, okay, born in 94, but I need the year. Okay, so he just, I guess I can't do math. We were just in 2024. He just turned 30. So October 14th, 1994. I guess just to give you a little inside info on Jared Goff's birthday. Chat, what is Jared Goff's sign? Does Pro Football Reference need to add that next to his nickname, Jared Goff? You know, Gemini. But 30 years, 90 days for our boy Jared Goff. So I don't know, Jared Goff at 30 versus Herbert at 26. At this point, you know, you can still make the peak of the powers case for Herbert, that maybe you get those more years. But again, you know, Goff has even had more playoff success than Herbert at this point. That's not even, you know, Goff's been to a Super Bowl, couple of championships, and has got a team, you know, Goff has even had more regular season success than Herbert has at this point. Like how many, because he had that MVP vote, or I guess no, he wasn't ever actually getting MVP votes on the Rams. But he's made 4 Pro Bowls in his career. And, you know, I feel like, the 2018 season, like those years when they were making that Super Bowl run, Yeah, that 2018 season. Like, I feel like there was MVP consideration for him. So I think Gurley, of course, was the ballot guy for that season. At the end of the day, I think you can. It's not like the NBA. The NBA, you do get 5 votes, so that that's 2 extra guys, and it's not just 2 extra guys as well too. Like if you look at the Basketball Reference, it'll make a note even if you get the votes. So at the end of the day, I think you can only vote for 3 guys. There's only 3 options to vote for, whereas I think the NBA ballot is just like, who are you going to vote for? And everybody just kind of makes their choice, if I'm not mistaken. And, and for basketball, it works out for where most of the time, of course, everybody's, not just thinking the same way, of course, for the top guys, but, that top sort of first team All NBA can kind of form out pretty obviously from season to season. But yeah, if there was like an open MVP ballot like that, I mean, Goff would definitely have been in the consideration and definitely gotten some votes, in that Rams season and definitely over the last couple of Detroit seasons as well. And maybe he's in consideration. I guess we did get the All-Pro teams released, so the award stuff is definitely underway as we get closer, of course, to the NFL Honors Week as well, the week before the Super Bowl. But maybe he's just going to miss that because it's probably going to be, Allen, Jackson, and Barkley. That's tough, Chad, because I guess you have to reward Barkley for the historic numbers. And it's not even an I guess, but Jared Goff, 15-2 this year as a starting quarterback. Mahomes was, 15-1 maybe? 14-1? I forget. Did he have 15 or 14 wins? Probably, 15. 16? Was he 16-1? I guess 16-1, not 15-1. But, I guess he's not going to be on the MVP ballot either, but would he be closer to getting Goff? And it's like, how far off, just from a performance standpoint, was he from Mahomes this year and just from these other top quarterbacks in the league? But now there is just like, as Herbert starts to get into that peak of his years, like he does start to be now classified in a different tier of guys. Where again, with a guy like Herbert, you could always bank on the potential as well too. But that's the unfortunate thing, chat. And do we know from firsthand? Like, make no mistake, potential can just go out the window faster than, you know what. But, and not to say that Herbert still doesn't have potential, even at, 26, 27, of course. But we're just saying, like, it becomes a different thought process, of course, the farther you delve into your career, where, if it's 4 years ago and you go, well, Goff's already at the peak of his powers, where Herbert is, he's still a young guy. He's just getting in the league. He's still making his way. Like now it's, Goff is still at the peak of his powers and Herbert is also at the peak of his powers, but Goff is maybe just the better quarterback at this point. And I guess, we still have to see Goff play in the playoffs. Maybe this is what I'm saying. We need to do and maybe it was the quarterback position specifically. Like you need to wait post playoffs to do your playoff rankings. I think Goff is a guy that really is gonna move up as well too. But like you've got Stafford in the mix. Like they had Herbert, I guess, one spot over Stafford on the Ringer ranking. And again, like I'm probably totally aligned with that. Like going into the playoffs, I guess, the top, like they have it listed right now, Lamar, Allen, Mahomes, just based on the way the regular season turned out. I get it, However, how it's like basically however do you want to list the guys? How did they perform for 2024? Or, are you throwing like a little bit of bigger picture legacy thing in there as well? But, those are the top 3 guys, obviously. That's why, Herbert's not breaking into that list. But, for that Ringer next group, they had, again, just because I don't want to spoil my own rankings, but the highly anticipated Rem and Sam positional rankings. Pause. That could mean a lot of things. Stay tuned to what that episode could be. But, you got that next group of Burrow, Stafford, Herbert, and then I guess it goes to Love, Smith, Prescott, Stroud. So I feel like, there was Stroud at 10, Goff at 11. But, that next group of guys, like I'm saying, I would have really considered having Burrow and Herbert would have been just a much closer conversation again after this year with the overall success that the Chargers were able to have in that bounce back fashion. But unfortunately, he's kind of blocked himself a little bit up from going up the rankings. That's what happens when you throw 4 picks in a playoff game. It's just what it's going to be. But I guess I'm, fortunately looking at the list of guys behind him, I guess they have Hurts down at 15. So, Hurts, he's going to win this game. Steven Ruiz might just be late to the game. Maybe they just haven't updated it yet after a while. But does he actually have Hurts under Rodgers? There's no way. Shout out to Steven Ruiz. Call in if you're in the chat and defend yourself, please. But how do you have Hurts under Rodgers? That's actually indefensible. That's actually, and make no mistake, like Steven Ruiz knows more about football than we do. He's better with the X's and O's. He's just a much more knowledgeable football person. So he's definitely more capable of doing this list. And I'm not saying this is a bad list. I'm just saying that. Steven, Mr. Ruiz, that's an L take, brother. Rodgers over Hurts. And like for what as well too? Like, I guess are you so committed to honesty that you feel just so in your heart that Rodgers, like, it's like, and I'm not even against like putting Rodgers down the ranking. I'm just saying, like, how do you think people are going to take that? Like, Hurts is just so obviously so much. I don't know. It's just like Hurts is obviously so much better than Rodgers. Rodgers sucked at the end of the season, people. I'm sorry. Rodgers, shout out, like, salute. You had a great career. You're a top 10, top 15 quarterback, top, whatever quarterback of all time, winning the MVPs. You won the Super Bowl. Like, you had a great career, and the talent as well. One of the most talented quarterbacks that ever played the game. I'm just saying the last couple of weeks of the season, maybe you weren't playing as well as Jalen Hurts. That's all I'm saying. That's it. 2024, weeks 8 through 15. That stretch. That's all I'm saying. So, Hurts, even behind Kyle, like, was Hurts not playing well at the end of the year? Am I crazy? Do I need to go back and double check? Because again, like, Love was having that sneaky efficiency year. If we're going to give Herbert, if we're just going to keep glazing Herbert for not throwing picks. Like, again, Love wasn't throwing picks the back half of the season, but the Packers were, losing games. And, Jalen Hurts, 18-5 interception ratio. I guess missed the last couple of games. So, there's some injuries in there that are going to throw his total yardage numbers off a little bit. He's only at 2,900 yards for this season. So, he's going to be in the mid to upper, 3,000s if he's fully healthy. But, 29... Wait, what was that total number again? Let me see. 2,903. So... the game, if you take out the game where he was 1-for-4 versus Washington and got hurt, so those first 14 games of the season he was healthy, he was 206 yards a game. Basically a touchdown in a game, a half a pick a game. But I feel like his amount of games compared to what Rodgers did, like, I feel like it's pretty close. I don't feel like it was too far off, just raw numbers on the season. Oh, okay, it was a little. Rodgers up 3,900 yards. Okay, shout out. A lot of garbage time stats for Rodgers, I guess. Sneaking him in there somewhere. Pause. But 28 touchdowns, 11 picks. Still has the lowest career interception rating, though, looking at it. So, again, shout out to Rodgers. I guess, the most efficient quarterback in NFL history. That's just looking at the stats here. You can make the case that that's a fact. But, yeah, I think you got to have Jalen Hurts in the top 10, right? Still got Trevor Lawrence over Jalen Hurts. But, yeah, like, I guess even Hurts versus Herbert now. Again, Hurts has a Super Bowl run in the mix. And it does show you, sometimes the just amount of sort of respect you can get. That pedigree sort of, what's the right word for it, chat? Like wave, like the wave that you can ride? Is wave the right word? Is it like wake? Like that. What's the right term for water momentum, chat? But you catch the right wave and you can ride that pedigree first round, of course, top 5, top 7 draft pick wave for a long time. And you see a guy like Hurts, like he's still battling, I think, to get more respect than Justin Herbert. And I guess there's definitely other factors probably involved in it as well too, that, we're just not in a position to speak on. But, I just from a football standpoint as well, I feel like that status in him having to work up to that level of like, oh, is he first round guy confidence? Is still there a little bit. But, now Herbert has a couple of playoff games, win a couple of different playoff environments with a good playoff coach. And, I think a little bit as well, too. Like the whole kind of Chargers game, there was some slop, like we're saying, the bounced, off the hands of the receiver. Like there was some sloppiness throughout the Chargers where, again, are we just going to prove here how quickly narratives can change? But, with the Harbaugh thing, like you get a lot of credit, of course, for how he was able to turn around that Ohio State run at the end. But, those early Harbaugh years in there, it's not like they were just losing to Ohio State. And it's not like they were just getting to the end of the season and, Ohio State was this last mountain to conquer and Harbaugh couldn't conquer it. Like, yeah, that was definitely part of the factor. But they were also shooting themselves in the foot time and time again earlier in the season. And there would be games where they were definitely the better team. And, games as well, too, that I'm trying to think there's like some Notre Dame games in there. Some games against some good opponents where you are just looking earlier in the season going, oh, man, our 14 playoff hopes are just going to get snapped in week 2. But there was other times, that Iowa year, the year we lose to Ohio State on that insane Curtis Samuel play where, was it Curtis Samuel? Is that the right guy? I blocked. Oh, Paris Campbell. When Paris Campbell just, I'm trying to blank all these terrible memories out of my mind. But I think it was one of those, one of those utility receivers that went through Ohio State over the course of them just torching Michigan. I think it was, oh man, how come I'm blanking on this guy? It's one of those ones that hurts deep too. Pause. That's crazy. I'm sorry about that. That's wild. But it's one of those really painful sports memories because, I mean, they should have just gotten the tackle. A basic fundamental play like that. There's when you get upset by like some craziness or something wild, but just something that's like a jet sweep and you didn't make the tackle on a third down that set up and that's the thing as well too, like set up a fourth down. Like they had another play. They could have made a stop and just it wasn't quite enough. But they definitely had performances earlier in some of those seasons where they could have maybe set themselves up for more success. And I remember that first season, 2015, they weren't even really supposed to go 10-3. That was kind of what we're seeing this year from this Chargers team, where you go, okay, the turnaround, maybe they're actually overachieving at this point in the season. But that was also the season, if I'm not mistaken, where, and again, all these terrible memories are like I don't even watch highlights today. Today they showed the highlight of the Colts Saints onside kick. The minute Sean Payton does anything on special teams, it's like, okay, I know I just have to just turn the TV off for a couple of seconds because I know exactly what highlight they're going to pull up. But, like that, they had that Michigan State versus that punt and that crazy chaotic play that they ended up losing the game on. And if they had won that game, they would have only been a one-loss team going into that Ohio State game, and they got slaughtered in that Ohio State game again. So it really wouldn't have been close at the end of the day. But they had a chance to be, I think, in the Big Ten championship game if they had won that game. And maybe Ohio State was a one-loss team as well that year. Let me double check and see if I can remember exactly. Because we had 2 losses going into the Ohio State game and 1 Big Ten loss. But I think the problem might have been Michigan State on the other side. Because, yeah, Ohio State had 1 Big Ten loss. So if we had beaten Ohio State, same amount of Big Ten losses, and we would have had the tiebreaker over Ohio State. But then because we lost to Michigan State was the one team that actually had beaten Ohio State that year. So, yes, we would have had the tiebreaker over Ohio State, but Michigan State would have had the tiebreaker over us. So Michigan State would have gotten, I think, the boost. But is that the right division, chat? Because, again, now the Big Ten divisions are whacked out. So it's like our memory's been erased from these old. Yeah, because, yeah, so Michigan State, Ohio State, and Michigan were all in the same division. And then, of course, Iowa just stumbling into the Big Ten championship. It'll be like, remember the days when Iowa could just get in? Pause. Iowa had easy access to the Big Ten championship. But Michigan State, and they did, of course, get in, I think. Well, because, yeah, they would have had the tiebreaker, I guess, over Ohio State that year anyways, right? So, yeah, but all that to say, like, if Michigan had actually and I think that would have technically maybe been an upset from going. Again, I don't remember the preseason hype from that year, but I just remember us not being that, that expected. Let me see if I can double check our preseason ranking, because we were number 12 when we faced Ohio State. I forget what we were when we played Michigan State. We were number 12 again. We played Michigan State. Okay, so we were 12, went down, and then back up to 12. But yeah, we were unranked to start the year that year. And we lost to Utah that opening game. So again, unranked, losing to Utah, it's like maybe the Harbaugh thing is just going to take some time. But that's a little retroactive. That, hindsight is 2020. Because again, that team with Rudock, and it definitely overachieved, so we can't get too mad. But it's, again, like they shot themselves in the foot. They got the whole punt situation, and they just ended up losing that game. But the next year as well, too, was that year where they are, 9-0 going into that game at Iowa, and then they lose to Iowa, and then again, lose to Ohio State in that 3-point close game. So if we don't lose to Iowa and we're undefeated going into that Ohio State game, Ohio State, again, on the other side, I think might have been a one-loss team going into that game. Let me check. So I think even if we had lost that game, or were they a 2-loss team? Okay, so yeah, that would have been for tiebreaker. I mean, it's the Michigan State-Ohio State game. It's a tiebreaker game every year. But, regardless, we would have, if we didn't shoot ourselves in the foot in the Karis Campbell play. And then, not able to beat Florida State with Dalvin Cook as well either. So, it's also maybe speaks to, it speaks, of course, to how difficult it is to build a program, from the ground up as well, too. It's different with NIL. And, I know Shane Gillis was making his jokes on College Game Day, and he's just saying they're jokes. But, there was, it's not like the SEC wasn't, it's not like there wasn't something going on where you couldn't just get these massive influx of talent. It's like, with respect to Saban and that he was putting together a great program with great kids, and he's going to stand up for his guys. We get it. But, I'm sure there's something going on. I mean, if they're paying Jalen Rose to be on the Fab Five, like, I guess, or Chris Webber, I guess do we want to start? We know who got caught, so it's like, they want to start paying Chris Webber on the Fab Five to be there in the 90s, and, maybe even going back farther than that. Like, they're leaving duffel bags on park benches back in the 50s. Like, who knows? Like, the Alabama Crimson Tide under Nick Saban are sliding their players a few bucks, and maybe there's a company car involved as well, too. I mean, wasn't it not were the Georgia players that, that tragic event that Jalen Carter was involved in, were they not using, I forget if they were cars, and, this is sketchy legal, I don't know if this is sketchy legal stuff, with allegations or whatever, but just to try to remember what happened, like, I was either cars that, they had gotten from a sponsorship, or like the school had these cars for the players. It's like the ultimate version of I guess, at Iowa, they give the players scooters, but I guess at the University of Georgia, you just like drive around in, Cadillac SUVs instead. So I forget which way it went, it went back and forth, but it's not like Alabama and these bigger SEC, maybe Clemson, like any team that had a ton of talent before NIL was legal. It's like they weren't doing a little NIL. It's not like they weren't doing a little NIL stuff beforehand. So again, maybe not that Harbaugh and Michigan weren't doing that as well too, but maybe over time, just I mean, obviously the time it took him to build that up was just longer than some of these other programs. We got the good old Go Blue Balls, chat. It's just what it was, but of course we finally got the national title in the mix. But yeah, the next year as well too, 2017, not a great overall season as well, but losing to an unranked Michigan State as the 7th team. They lost to other good losses, but yeah, that first loss, of course, again to Michigan State. Yeah, those couple of years there where he just couldn't get past either of the rivals as well too, and then that year was a little like the day experience. Not because he was a little earlier on as well. It was only his third season at Michigan at this point. And then they do turn around and get a win versus them in 2018. But the loss to an unranked Michigan State was a little like, okay, it's just like, 4 or 5 straight losses to these rivals. And then, of course, they lose to Ohio State again the next year. But again, 4-team playoff, like, you kind of have to be perfect. And unfortunately, that next year, again, this 2018 season where they finally get the win over Michigan State, that was the year we lost to Notre Dame week 1, a 12th ranked Notre Dame. So it's like, okay, that one loss, like, we just are giving ourselves no wiggle room. It's not like we want to give we want to win that Ohio State game anyways, but they're just not giving ourselves any advantage in these games that maybe we should be taking advantage of. The non-Ohio State games, 9-4 the next year, not really in the mix. Then you would have the COVID year after this, 2-4, and then this next couple of years is when they're finally able to turn it around on Ohio State. But then you think even that first, or I guess the first national title year, anyways. Or no, they didn't lose to TCU in the national title. They lost them in the semifinals. But even that playoff game against TCU, maybe that's more of a McCarthy performance. So maybe it's is Harbaugh just at times subject of some poor quarterback performances? McCarthy had some costly picks, and it's not, again, just costly picks. Like, he had some costly pick sixes as well in that game against TCU, and same with, of course, Herbert in this last game. But like I'm saying, this may just be a part of the Harbaugh cycle. Like, expectations throughout the regular season, building a competitive team that looks like he can go up against the top teams, but maybe there's a couple of seasons in there where it's like, there may be some disappointing postseason performances. It's just what it's going to be. But, of course, Harbaugh's legacy, solid, been in Super Bowls, been in national championships. We're not necessarily doubting Harbaugh, going forward. Because, again, he had, I think, a lot of work to do in some ways with what Staley had left. But, in other ways as well, like, this was a super talented roster that he was taking over. And, having Herbert is still about as big of a quarterback advantage that you can have in the league. Like, like we were saying, maybe, is his difference in this playoff game, like, moving from top 5 to a top 10 quarterback? Like, he's still going to be in our top 10. I don't know if that's a spoiler alert, but I don't know if I'm going to have a hard time. I feel like it might be difficult to make a list of 10 guys and not put Herbert as one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the league. Like, I guess I don't know how you guys really felt about, but I guess another guy I forgot to bring up as well, too, like maybe a guy like even Jaden Daniels, after 1 year where you go, okay, yeah, again, Herbert's more established, but, if Jaden Daniels wins a playoff game tonight, chat, then Jaden Daniels already has more playoff wins than Herbert. Maybe we'll be even seeing a couple of memes like that. And once it happens, Penix as well, too. Either quarterback that wins tonight will have more wins than Justin Herbert in the playoffs. So obviously that's just kind of a stroke of luck. Is that a pause, chat? A stroke of anything might be a pause. But, obviously that's a bit of luck that it works out that both guys haven't played yet. But, either way, like, one of them's going to get the win. So there's going to be, and especially if it is Daniels, with what we've seen from this year, there's going to be a vote of confidence in him as a clutch performer that maybe, or sorry, I don't know why I keep thinking Atlanta. They're playing Tampa tonight. Tampa is Baker Mayfield. So yeah, I guess if Jaden Daniels wins, then that's exactly the point where the confidence that we have in him, and especially with some of the last minute drives as well too from this season, like maybe there's an interesting case where we're kind of getting back into that same cycle where Herbert was once the young guy. Now he's got the young guy on his heels chasing him. But, maybe not to get super crazy, but like, what about Baker, chat? What about Baker versus Herbert after this year? Like, obviously the stats is going to be the thing that, I guess the efficiency is going to be the thing that really wins Herbert this argument. Like, if we're talking about two complete opposite quarterbacks, I mean, this might be actually a good, would you rather thought experiment because they are such completely different when it comes to that number. Like, for the regular season anyways, Herbert wasn't turning the ball over and Mayfield was turning the ball over more than any other quarterback. But still like there's a chaoticness to Mayfield's game. He's still 4,500 yards and 41 touchdowns. At the end of the day, still kind of the same record. And, maybe his gutsiness and his confidence and his sort of irrational playability that, again, sometimes leads to these bad plays, like maybe that is still a thing in these playoff games that maybe you'd rather have than, I don't, like, I'm not going to sit here and say that Herbert doesn't have the big, like, I'm never one to say, like, a guy's not, like, he's going to crumble in the moment or whatever. Like, I would say, like, some guys just, really rise to the occasion. It is what it is with some of these events. Like, obviously Herbert missed some, it's more just like the individual plays that Herbert made to look at and go, okay, yeah, the man just, missed some passes in this game that were costly and resulted in, immediately the other team scoring, but also, at times resulted in your team, killing a drive as well too. Like, I would look at that more so than, oh, does Herbert mentally collapse in these moments and fall apart or whatever? Like, I'm sure the mental aspect is a part of it, but, I don't know if it's necessarily, at least right now, like something I can fully judge properly. But, it's like, at least I judge how I mentally feel about a quarterback anyways, and his ability to make good plays. And it's like, if Daniels is able to perform, if Baker, like both of these guys, and maybe it's also an NFC conference thing as well, but I'm just saying it becomes a much more interesting conversation now between Herbert and some other guys, where at least maybe some more mystery of Herbert's playoff performance was actually like being beneficial for him there for a while. But make no mistake, a spoiler alert now, he's still going to be above Dak Prescott. Sorry, Cowboys fans. Herbert, still rather have him over Dak. But I say that out of love. I say that because you can check the tapes, and you can check the tapes. Make no mistake. As people in our lives know, there's some times where, if we support you as a player, maybe we'll get a little frustrated. But I've always been pro Dak for his career. So I mean, I'm looking at this list right now. They have Geno over Dak. Of course, Ruiz is a big Geno Smith guy. Pause. But I mean, realistically, that's kind of crazy. But I like Drake May is I think in a little bit of a different tier. Jaden Daniels being in the playoffs, like playing winning football. Like I'm not saying you can't make the case for whether you'd have Drake May or Justin Herbert. I'm just saying, at least I'm giving Herbert the benefit of the doubt and putting the Drake May in sort of the non-applicable category yet for this conversation of sort of playoff football. Again, like realistic team building stuff, we can have the talks all day. But, Herbert versus Purdy, like that's another interesting one. I think maybe with the way Purdy played, there's still some separation there. But regardless, like Purdy has had more playoff success than Herbert has. Purdy's been in a Super Bowl. Purdy's almost been to 2. I know he got subbed in that, only played, 7 games his rookie year, but was still in the playoffs and was still making plays then. So I don't know what Purdy is looking like. Sam Darnold, again, all these guys, like it's just, these playoffs could really dictate what happens with his status in the league. And he's a guy with Harbaugh, with this system, that they're going to, that's the thing about the Chargers and with Harbaugh. It's like, as long as that's sort of the vibe of the team, the Harbaugh vibe, that they're going to be building in the trenches to protect Herbert. They're going to be building the right way on defense. In the draft, they're probably going to be hopefully targeting the right positions. So I think we still love the situation for Herbert going forward. And if we do the rankings and he's a little lower than maybe I would want to put him, it would probably be more of a reflection of the moment than, again, the long-term Herbert standing or whatever, because I would fully expect him to bounce back next year. But it is definitely like a type performance. And maybe, again, it's the biasness of Herbert, where if I'm an anti-Herbert guy, I'm totally like all in now on, or maybe, maybe it's not even like anti-Herbert, but if I'm really pro one of these other guys, like maybe I can use this Herbert performance now to like take him off the list. Like these performances are like skips on like a really good album. Like Herbert's season was like a really good album with like a really big skip on it. It's like, okay, yeah, obviously this song is not good. And, maybe it's like a playoff performance is like a song with like a big feature that it's like, up and coming artist. And he got the Drake feature, it's like the One Gone Delilah on your really amazing album. It's like, how did you just waste this Drake feature? But it's like, okay, obviously there's still a ton of talent here. Like, I'm bumping the rest of these songs. It's like, okay, yeah, maybe Herbert's still kind of a regular season guy, but he's still like an awesome regular season guy. And the efficiency that he has, and the though I think the way that the style that which this team played this year, like, that's conducive to playoff football. And we saw Herbert have success through the regular season in that style. So again, the fact that he can quarterback a team like this, if we can see that translate into the playoffs, I would still have the confidence in him. And, maybe some more like McConkey in year 2. I mean, if anything, the confidence that you have in McConkey now as a playoff guy is, I mean, because he already showed that he is. He almost had 200 yards. Half of them, of course, on that one touchdown, which was that like 80 yards or something? 70. I mean, length of the field. But, I mean, just him down the edge, the stretch of the season in general. Let me actually see where he was at in the draft class just for yards. Because this was an interesting class, too, with guys missing time. Like, I think Brian Thomas is probably going to be, because I think he ended up being top 5 maybe in the league this year in receiving yards. Let me see what he was at. He was at 1282. Malik Thomas was right behind him at 1204 in 2 less games. Shout out. But Malik Neighbors, 20 more catches than Brian Thomas as well, too. So, they both had their give and take. Both amazing seasons from the LSU guys. Really, that's just incredible that it really is happening again, chat. Like, I still believe in Marvin Harrison to be an awesome receiver, but Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas were just better this year. Like, those were straight up. And, we had our takes about Brian Thomas versus Malik Neighbors, but I still think we thought that Marvin Harrison would be the best receiver in the draft. But those two guys are, at least after year 1, the 2 best guys. Unless, of course, you want to put McConkey in that list as well for the way he performed down the season. Because 16 games, he's still, I guess, really only a few less yards. 100 less yards or so than Brian Thomas. A couple less touchdowns as well, too. But there's a run game thing with the Chargers in the red zone that they're doing. So let me see here. Last couple of games. Oh, I guess the numbers have been kind of mid as of recently. Not that, of course, he hasn't been playing well. I'm just saying the stats aren't off the charts. Or wait, I'm looking at the wrong. Oh, I was looking at the. Okay. Yeah, no, he has been playing really good. Yes. I was going to totally contradict our point there, Chad. I was looking at the wrong number on the stat sheet. Yeah. So he's had 87 against Denver. I guess this goes back week 16. Week 17, 94 yards. Week 18, 95 yards. Of course, 197 yards this last week. 117 yards in week 14. 83, 123. So let's see here. Let's actually go filter this out over the last couple of... I'm looking at it in a different spot where I can't filter it out. But in this one, won't have the playoff performance in it. So we'll have to add in the math real quick. But to end the regular season, last 10 games, 88.4 yards a game and a half a touchdown a game. So he was on pace for the best rookie season over the last 10 games. And I guess, I don't know, if Brian Thomas had a 10-game stretch in there that was better than what McConkey did. But again, 884 over the last 10 plus the 197 that he did today. So, I mean, he's at 1,000 yards over the last 11 games already. Divide that up for a per game number. And yeah, he's at 98.5 yards and, 6 touchdowns in total over that stretch. So, I mean, super impressive from what we've seen McConkey this season. And to be honest, again, 1,000 or so yards. I mean, did he outgain Harrison for yardage? I think he did. He was right behind Bowers. So, I think, again, not to just go chalk with the yardage thing, I think, honestly, Brock Bowers might be the best receiver in this class. Let's go. I just don't want to go chalk with the yards and go Thomas, Neighbors, Bowers, because that's a strong top 3 combo, and there's really not a wrong answer either way. All 3 had amazing seasons. I might personally go, just because we had so much Brian Thomas stock going into the draft, I still might lean Thomas, Bowers, Neighbors. But I mean, you might have to lean McConkey over Harrison. Harrison was really good in the red zone this year. He still had more touchdowns than McConkey, but prisoner of the moment. McConkey's had some big minutes. So, shout out to the Chargers. They'll still be in pretty good shape. I'm like Ancho people today, just sniffing my fingers, but unfortunately, it's not because of Joy Taylor. It's just because of allergies. It's not us sniffing our fingers. Like, it's just itching the nose, but but let's see where the Chargers are at right now. Speaking of butts, where are the Chargers at in the draft? Of course, playoff team. Right now, looking at 23 in the draft. And I guess it'll get settled a little bit depending on what happens. So right now, Tankathon has the Commanders beating the Buccaneers. Of course, the Eagles beating the Packers. So Eagles at 20. I guess they have the Rams losing to the Vikings as well. But if the Vikings lose in the wild card, they're not going to get the 20. I guess they would get the 24th pick, right? Am I blanking on how the NFL draft totally works? Would they really drop down that high or that low in the draft? I feel like based on regular season, they would still be pretty decently up there. But, yeah, I guess it is probably I think it is a total playoff ordeal, based on those tiers. That's just, I guess, the craziness now of the single round bye. Because, back in the day, you would at least have 4 teams that, are at least going to be out of this potential tier of wild card round losers. Like, they're going to be, divisional round loser is going to be a top 25 pick. So, the Vikings aren't going to fall below 25. So, right now, they would have them at 28, losing in the divisional round. So, if they lost in the wild card, then again, they could at least drop down to 24. So, that would be interesting for a 14-3 team to drop out, have McCarthy back in, just be like, hey, let's let Darnold go, take a guy there. But yeah, you got the Chargers, in the top 25 of the draft at 23. Let's see what some names are in this range. Oh, so right now they have him adding Mbuka from Ohio State, the receiver. Benjamin Morrison, the pick right ahead of him, the Rams, the cornerback out of Notre Dame. So if he's in that range, that's a fun guy, of course. He's going to be on our watch list as well. Maybe 14's a little rich for him, but maybe he moves up in the board as well. Jahdae Barron, cornerback out of Texas. Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M. Also, is he out of that CBS show, Shamar Stewart? I don't know. That name sounds familiar. Tyler Booker out of Bama. So we'll see where the Chargers go. I would assume that they would continue to add just like one of the fundamental pieces, right? Another lineman, either offense or defense. Of course, their defensive line was still able to give them good production this year. At least, Mack had a good season. Bosa gave him some good run this year. But you're going to want some long-term young depth there as well. So I assume they would just go defense and maybe cornerback. Kind of bolster the secondary up a little bit. Again, maybe if Morrison's on the board, maybe Morrison's like the prized sort of mid-teens to 20s kind of pick. Which means maybe we do just have to snag him up at 14. But with Tankathon, back to the Colts taking a tight end in the first round. They always have us taking one. Tyler Warren out of Penn State this year. But why not just wait for the second round, Chris Ballard, and take that guy that Sam likes, Helms? The Texas guy, is he up for the draft this year yet, though? Maybe that's the problem. Maybe Helm is not on the board. He is, and he's 91. Whoa! So we need to keep an eye on Gunnar Helm. Sam giving us some early draft sleeper knowledge in January. But Colson Loveland as well, too, at 19. So, how are we going to take the Penn State guy, Ballard, over the Michigan guy? What's going on with that? That'd be some crazy work. But, yeah, shout out to the, I almost said San Diego Chargers. Shout out to the LA Chargers for a successful uptick season, bringing in Harbaugh, and at least it didn't come down to clock management and timeouts at the end. They got dominated, and it didn't work. The Staley coaching decisions wouldn't have mattered if Harbaugh, messed those back up, and you're going, oh no, we're back in a position with Staley or whatever. But maybe you are a little bit. I don't know, Chargers fans. Are you feeling more confident, less confident after this year? I still feel like with Harbaugh and his track record, obviously, of building teams, because that is the part of the Michigan run that's going to work in his favor here is, we saw that take time, and we saw that really build up into something. We saw him collect the pieces. We saw him, not that he would necessarily have to go out and get a quarterback. Maybe he's going to have to after this week with the way Herbert played. But, we saw him have to add the pieces, kind of tinker with it, get everything right. And maybe, some perfect storm of sort of outside factors as well. But that's kind of the base for everybody, especially in the NFL. Like, that's why Mahomes and Brady are so special, because they just, or swim up against the tide and just make it to the championship every year, even though it's not possible. Same with, I guess that's unless you're the greatest ever at your position, which Harbaugh, maybe, he makes his case as he continues to build his resume. Who knows? But, as a great guy, not the greatest, shout out. I even hate saying that out loud because of, bringing to the title of the Michigan as the greatest Michigan coach of all time, which, again, I guess, Bo Schembechler, there's some guys in there where maybe Harbaugh himself would have some reverence for some dudes, but he got the national title. Who was the Michigan coach in the 30s? Let's shout him out real quick, chat, because he would be the other guy that, just in terms, again, of the amount of winning that he was able to bring to the university, that's the only other guy. Because it's not, Michigan just had the one other title in the 90s. It's not like there was another Michigan coach with 2 or 3 titles that Harbaugh had to catch up. Like, make no mistake, he can literally just win one title and already have the resume of, a great national champion. Yeah, I mean, they go, so the Michigan national champions, the turn of the century, they just rip off 4 in a row. 1901, 02, 03, and 04. And 18, 23, 33, 48. And then from 1948 all the way to 1997, a 50-year drought. Can I do math? Yeah, 49-year drought between national titles. So, fortunately, the 97 to 23 was not as, a 50-year drought. But, hopefully it's not a 97 to 23 again. Hopefully with Bryce Underwood, baby, Sharon Moore. Hopefully we'll be back up in the mix. But, yeah, outside of, that Lloyd Carr national title, or not, yeah. And then the Schembechler run. But who was the guy? I guess not even in the 30s, because the 30s titles were spread out there a little bit. They got that championship at 48, 20-something. 33, I think, was another one. Harry Kipke? Yeah, I think Harry Kipke's a legend. Oh, Fielding Yost, if I said that name right. Yes, iconic. How could I forget? Good old Fielding Yost? Y-O-S-T? Let's see here, chat. And really, stayed at Michigan a lot longer than Jim Harbaugh as well. So I think if we're doing the all-time rankings, maybe it's Fielding Yost and then Harbaugh. Then, the Lloyd Carr, Bo Schembechler combination. Fielding H. Yost, of course, because everybody back in the day had a middle initial. When did we drop the middle initial from people's names? I honestly don't even know what Sam's middle initial is. Am I just a terrible friend? I might be, but I'm trying to think of other friends' middle initials. I maybe know, obviously some family members, but I don't even know what these people's names are. I don't even know what my friends' names are, Chad. I'm just a bad person. But yeah, I don't, it's not Billy. Yeah, I get, what is Billy Buckets? Doesn't even have a middle initial. He's just Billy Buckets. But, it's not Billy H. Buckets. It's Fielding H. Yost. Legendary guy. Oh, look at that. Spent his last days in Ann Arbor. Love to see it. Michigan man through and through. And Michigan athletic director as well. Up until the 40s. So, really responsible for, basically all of Michigan's success, responsible for all of Michigan's titles except for that 48 one, up until 1901 to 04, 18, then 23. I guess that would have been his head coaches, but then was able to snag those other titles in the 30s as the athletic director of the school when he went out and brought in, who was the coach that Harry Kipke to replace him. Fritz Chrysler after that. Beanie Oosterbaan. Bump Elliott. I mean, we may have the best run of coach names of anybody. That's an elite run of names. Fielding Yost, Harry Kipke, Fritz Chrysler. It really is the Fritz Chrysler, Beanie Oosterbaan, Bump Elliott run to Bo Schembechler. That's an iconic four-name sort of combination. But even, up to Brady Hoke as well, too. Brady Hoke, the Hoax. Make no mistake, that nickname caught on very, very quickly in his time in Michigan. But shout out Philly. It's still 10-0 at halftime as the Packers look to at least do something in the second half. Jordan Love, oh, holy cow, people. Yikes. You hate to see it. Not that Hurts is, lighting up a storm, but at least his team is winning. So we'll give him that mark. Herbert, he's going back up the rankings with the way these guys are playing. But let's take a quick break, and then we will be back with the rest of halftime for them, I guess, and then the second half of Eagles versus Packers. Who will be moving on, chat? Will the Eagles just dash everybody's Super Bowl hopes right away? We'll find out next. Okay, people, second half of Packers-Eagles about to get up underway. But there was another game as well, too, that took place on Saturday. Not just Chargers-Texans, but Ravens-Steelers as well. And speaking of people that are confident in their coaches, definitely not the Steelers, who, I gotta be honest, a little surprising. I guess maybe not super surprising because, again, we know that there is a loop of the expectations of Steelers fans with their team over the course of the season. We know that, I mean, we've seen all the memes on Instagram. It's like either whether or not they've started off bad or good, they're going to be 9 and whatever, 10 and whatever, and they're going to get eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. But, we honestly do need to just, every time we complain about what Mike Tomlin has, had in terms of success with these Steelers teams, we just need to look at the quarterback situation that he's working with. And, Pittsburgh, unfortunately, just has not been able to quite find the right footing in that spot. And yes, maybe you're at a point where you could go, it's not disastrous right now, but, you're playing Lamar Jackson on the other end. You're playing Derrick Henry on the other end. Like, it's not necessarily an upset. It's a divisional game. It's, you're getting slaughtered. Like, I get that. Again, emotionally, it's not the place that you want to be in at the end of the season. But, I mean, be honest. Do you want another coach rather than Tomlin? Like, even after this performance chat, I'm still, and after what this season has, happened for the Steelers, I'm still looking at Tomlin and going, which of these coaching candidates do I actually, in my gut, like, would I actually want to make the move over Tomlin? If you could potentially bring it in, like if you knew that you could get Ben Johnson, if you knew that you could get, the hottest coaching candidate and also, the best play caller or whatever, but, the best looking, best play caller, however you want to phrase it, if you get the hottest, coaching candidate on the market, instead of Tomlin, whoever you want to rank that as in your mind, is that a better move? Is that an upgrade type move? Like, to me, I don't know, Tomlin is still able to get a competency out of this team where I still feel like these teams are overachieving. And maybe Steelers fans are honestly just, do I have boogers just hanging out of my nose, chat? I feel like I'm just itch my nose so much. I've just gotten, you just massage them down to the surface, chat. I feel like this is going to be disastrous in a second, but anyways, I feel like the Steelers fans maybe are one of the teams, maybe they just kind of get a little overconsumed by their own expectations because, I guess I could look at this Colts season and go, it's an absolute disaster that we didn't make the playoffs this year. Like, how does Steichen and this group, especially in the AFC South, like, how are we not able to find a way to formulate a team that's able to win this division and win the playoffs? Like, I can absolutely look at that, and you can absolutely look at this roster and go, that's absolutely true. But, and if you're going to be glass half full, I guess, or optimistic, it's easy to, there's definitely a case to look at it and go, there is cornerbacks ups and downs. This was their first year where you have a super young, a quarterback that is, super underdeveloped and super still early on in his stage in terms of his quarterback process. And you can look at these reasons and go, okay, this was maybe a growth season going forward that maybe didn't quite result in the amount of wins that we thought, but, maybe we still were able to take steps forward in certain ways that can be beneficial going forward. And, I don't think they were so far off from, overachieving or underachieving where I can get unrealistic in my expectations where you go, oh, there's just no way they can bring Steichen back. Like, how can they do this? This would be like the team was disastrous or whatever. And there's also been some stuff about the locker room as well, too, which is, stuff to keep in mind going forward as well for next season if things go bad. Like, make no mistake, Steichen is an early candidate for a guy to not make it through the season. So maybe that's not a good sign for bringing back a coach. But, just in general with offensively, with what he's shown, with what he can do with quarterbacks, I feel like it's okay to necessarily give him the benefit of the doubt. But, same with Tomlin. Like, Tomlin has had enough success. And maybe if you go, how far away removed from that success are we? Like, it's all valid points, but again, just to go through like the teams that he's had over the past couple of seasons. Actually, before we do that, chat, we gotta take a quick. I gotta find. Do we have a Kleenex? I thought I had some in my jacket pocket. I know I brought in some into the studio in the past, but I just don't remember if they're still out here, chat. Let me see. We have to check the coat pockets real fast. This is disastrous. How do we not have this stocked? How do you have a backpack and just not have it properly stocked? This is kind of embarrassing. Letting my own self down. Not only letting Nas down, but when you let yourself down as well. It's just not good. See, chat? Now I have to like pretend to find a tissue over here, because otherwise I have to admit to doing some embarrassing things off screen in terms of the nose-picking realm. That just would not be fun to admit, chat. Oh, look, a tissue. How did I find... I do have a stash over here, chat. Oh, what is this? A full pack of Kleenexes. Yes, I properly blew my nose. I'm not currently picking my nose at all. Properly, tissue. Just a good old school taking care of the allergies, chat. Oh, man. I would show you the pack, chat, but there's no need to do that. But anyways, yeah. If you just looked at the quarterbacks that Tomlin had over the team, like, even the best coach in the league, like, what is Andy Reid going to do with these quarterbacks? Andy Reid was, still losing in the first round of the playoffs. And, maybe second round or whatever. Like, Andy Reid was not making the conference championship game with Alex Smith. And Alex Smith on those Chiefs still made... Like, would you take Steelers fans? Like, if you could go back into a time machine and... unfortunately, for some reason, the only quarterback you can grab in this time machine scenario is Kansas City, Alex Smith. You can't go back and get, you can't even like get peak Mahomes, peak, even if we're just thinking Chiefs franchise, you can't even go back and get peaked Len Dawson. For some reason, you just have to go back and get peak Alex Smith. Like, for this season, it definitely would have been an upgrade. You're taking peak Alex Smith over this version of Russell Wilson. You're taking peak Alex Smith over this version, over the versions of Kenny Pickett that we've seen, who, was almost not even the backup quarterback on the Eagles. He almost got beat out by Tanner McKee for the backup, and they still keep Tanner McKee on the roster as like a real competitor for that spot. And, is Alex Smith better than Roethlisberger over these last couple of years? I mean, Rudolph was in for Roethlisberger in 2019. Not a case that time. It was an injury. But was there a need for that, chat? But like 2020, that infamous 12-4 season, can we get a Roethlisberger versus Alex Smith stat comparison? Speaking of Justin Herbert, Offensive Rookie of the Year this season, and Aaron Rodgers was the MVP. And I'm trying to remember, maybe this was, I guess 2020 wouldn't have been in the Alex Smith timeline, unfortunately. Mahomes, yeah, would have been. I don't even have to pull up the numbers to go, oh, wait a second. Mahomes. And yeah, this would have been back in peak Mahomes. Remember when Mahomes was good too, chat, 2020? But this also would have been Houston Deshaun Watson. Where was Alex Smith even cooking in 2020? Let's see. But I guess we can just compare, like, 38-year-old Roethlisberger at 3,800 yards and 33 touchdowns, 10 picks. Like, he's fine. Like, it's very similar to it's like kind of that Aaron Rodgers-y number where, maybe he kind of can still put up some good stats and move around a little bit, but, he's just handicapping himself on third down and with making big plays and, with being able to get wins in the fourth quarter. But With Alex Smith in Kansas City, you got 11-4, 8-7, 11-5, 11-4, and then 9-6. And for the playoffs, 0-1, 1-1. I guess for Kansas City, he was 1-4 in the playoffs for his career in 4 seasons. So, that's 4 seasons total. Because I think when Andy Reid first got there, he brought in Alex Smith, or maybe, 1 season before that. But, it's basically just been Smith and Mahomes versus, Tomlin also has some other history as well. Even though it's good history, it's still time spent. And it still adds up. And I get it, it's hard to keep a coach. It's difficult to keep a coach around when your team is having middling success for a while. It just is. You feel like you need to make changes in dramatic. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it goes the opposite way. Like if it is broke, you're going to need to fix something. And you just keep making moves at quarterback over and over again. So, it almost gets to the point where is it just out of frustration, you just got to break up with Tomlin. But, on the other end of that, kind of like with Shanahan on the Niners, is this another team where, and maybe even Shanahan at this point is a little, just because, the Niners thing got so disastrous at the end where you get injuries and it's just like totally falling. It fell apart to the degree where it's like, okay, well, we just have to write that off and just move into next year. Like, again, with some, like, maybe some kind of pseudo expectations for what this team could be. But, like, what were your expectations for this team, Pittsburgh? You had Justin Fields. And you knew your battle was Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. So it's like, okay, if the Fields thing doesn't go right, our only other option is Wilson. So what is even the ceiling of a Wilson-led team? Again, you're maybe bring him in for the baseline at that point. But I still feel like that even really isn't that exciting. So the fact that there was, like, some success, some wins, Tomlin still got to keep, like, his 500 streak going. And the defense, TJ Watt had another amazing season. Like, the fact that you were still able to, I think, be 10-7 and be in the playoffs is still a win overall. What was your over-under even going into the year? 8 wins. I mean, yeah, there were 2 wins over what they were even supposed to be. So I get that maybe there is some frustration, because I'm seeing the frustration out there with Tomlin. Make no mistake. And I get it. Fans can be emotional at the end of a season. I'm not going to sit here and tell you how to feel, Steelers fans. I'm just saying, like, as a guy who, again, with the Harbaugh thing as well, I've had the perspective of rooting for a coach for a long time, and it seems like it's not working, and eventually he's able to break through and win a national title. Like, you even have the history that Tomlin did win a Super Bowl at some point. So maybe that can actually be a thing, of course, that can kind of go the other way if you hold on to the past too long. You also got to let go. I get it. I don't know what the right therapeutic advice is for dealing with the Tomlin issue, but the right football advice anyways feels like to stick with Tomlin. If you need to make some other moves, I don't know. It's still they were defense with 8th in points per game this year. So if you feel like, maybe Arthur Smith wasn't quite in his bag at offensive coordinator and you need to move on, then I'm not, I feel like you run Arthur Smith back and you got to do something different at cornerback. Like, I don't know. I feel like Fields has probably still got a year or 2 on his deal, but Wilson's a free agent. Like, you can't bring Wilson back necessarily. And I know that maybe you're not going to be in a position to draft a first-round quarterback anyways. 21 right now. Of course, it's really a 2-person first round at this point with Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. But I think, that's a strong, at least maybe second-round team if, you want to talk Jackson Dart. Maybe is Jackson Dart going to save the Steelers franchise? I don't know. Maybe you'd bring Kenny Pickett back at that point. But, bring in some offensive linemen. Maybe just don't be afraid to spend some big money. Like, are you going to drop the bag for Sam Darnold? I don't know. But maybe you actually do make the trade for McCarthy. Like, would you get... The thing about the McCarthy deal is, I don't know, you have the 21st pick. Like, maybe there's a chart that would say that McCarthy's not worth a first-round pick at this point. You'd have to... You would be able to only get him with, like, a second rounder or whatever. But I still think as a top was he top 12? Was he the 11th pick in the draft? But it's almost a top 10 pick in the draft. Like, to me, the chart value goes, okay, we could get the 11th pick in the draft for the 21st pick in the draft. Like, that could be pretty interesting. And if you put McCarthy into this draft alone, you know, maybe McCarthy's still the third quarterback off the board. But, you know, either way, like, McCarthy is still in the top 10. McCarthy's going to, now you're looking at a 3-person top 10, 3-person first round. And he's in the conversation. And maybe McCarthy is the number 1 overall pick in this draft. You know, it's hard to say, like, where Michigan is at in the national title landscape with the 12-team playoff and how that would be able to affect it or whatever. But McCarthy versus Shedeur versus Cam Ward, it's a really, really competitive 3-man group to try to decipher who the top guy is. But, you know, maybe you're in the mood for that. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe they go for a guy like Purdy. Or maybe they go, I'm trying to pull up the quarterbacks, but Sports Track is just not working right now. The hover option on the menu is just not going, it's not staying up. Okay, refresh the page, chat. Let's see if we can get this to stay. Okay, there we go. No, oh, it went away. Again. Disgusting. Joe Milton for the Patriots? You know, do you go for that? I mean, honestly, I was kind of throwing that out as a joke, but I mean, honestly, like Russell Wilson was on a $1 million deal, so I don't know if he's still living off the Broncos money, but if he is, and you can get him on another, you know, beneficial deal, a Russell Wilson, Joe Milton combination, that could be kind of fun. But otherwise, just, you know, Hendon Hooker. I guess we're getting really desperate. You know, how you feel? Nah, Willis is probably not an option. I'm trying to just go through the teams and see. Do the Eagles have a backup quarterback? Is Kenny Pickett worth a if you're the Steelers? No, probably not making that move. Tampa is probably happy with Baker. Dak? You know, do you go Dak? Do you go Tua? Do you start going that route where you trade for the big money quarterback that maybe the franchise is unhappy with? You know, you're probably not going to go Deshaun Watson in that case. But, you know, Geno, Kirk Cousins, do you feel like you want to take, you know, 40-mile-an-hour passes from Kirk Cousins? You can't even, I feel like, entertain that idea, unfortunately. And, you know, it's the quarterback position. It's not like there's going to be options to go around in the free agent market and in the offseason. But maybe if you get creative. But, like, if you're going to run Russell Wilson back and not run Mike Tomlin back, like, I get that could be a frustrating thing as well, too, to be like, okay, here we go again with Tomlin and Wilson. We know what the ceiling of that team could be. But to me, the frustration there would be not with Tomlin. It would be with maybe other factors going on with the team. So, again, the coach is unfortunately in this position, maybe the easiest thing to move on from. But to me, it wouldn't be the Steelers moving on from Tomlin. Again, for me, this is a situation where if you're one of the other teams, 'cause I think as of right now, Vrabel to the Patriots is the only thing that's been confirmed, which, you know, those teams were eyeing each other for a long, I feel like there was maybe some secret eyeballs being made there for a long time. Once them and Mayo broke up, it's like, oh, it's because Vrabel's in the picture now. We have to, probably what it's going to be. And I think today that news became official. But the rest of the coaching vacancies are still available. And if you're I think we threw the Bears out for the Niners with Shanahan, and it's a little different. You know, Shanahan's an offensive-minded guy. That's a little different for bringing in, you know, especially Caleb Williams specifically. But maybe even Tomlin's a little more gettable than Shanahan. Just because I feel like Shanahan is more connected to and maybe Tomlin has as much personnel power as Shanahan does in Pittsburgh, but maybe he even has more. But the way that San Francisco's presented, it just feels like Shanahan is a little more in control of what's going on there. And if they get rid of Shanahan, that's a clean house. I mean, not that, again, that Tomlin's not a clean house move, but that's just getting rid of a little bit more powerful front office figure as well than maybe Tomlin is in Steelers. But I could be wrong about that dynamic too. But if you're a team that needs a coach right now. Is this a situation where you're in the office with Tomlin like late at night and there's just, that there's been some tension in their relationship? That's kind of nice, actually. Of course, a stud left tackle. 9 and 10 on Tankathon is the Will Campbell Kelvin Banks combo, which, of course, either of those guys would be good for for Chicago. But I was seeing some Will Campbell clips that were kind of interesting. So I'm more just have seen a lot more Will Campbell than Kelvin Banks. I guess, we watch Texas games as well. But once we do the Kelvin Banks deep dive, maybe we'll switch our lean, our curve, pause. But yeah, I guess, the idea of taking an offensive lineman that high is really tempting. But, if there is just any chance that you could swoop in right now and get Tomlin, it's like you absolutely have to do it. And not even, of course, just that Tomlin's an upgrade from what you're able to get. But to me, it's still like Tomlin is this would be like a rare scenario where there is enough unhappiness in the fan base with what's been going on because of the quarterback position and because of maybe some of the stuff that Tomlin's had to work with, that, it's going to get put on Tomlin, and maybe you actually have a chance to kind of step in and make something happen. But to me, if you're Pittsburgh, I mean, Tomlin, you got it. That's the one sure piece that you have outside of TJ Watt, is the fact that that if Tomlin has a decent, Tomlin's going to give you a decent infrastructure in at least make your team. He's going to give you the foundation and have that in place for a win. And, Roethlisberger was a great quarterback. Roethlisberger is going to go in the Hall of Fame. Roethlisberger won Super Bowls, and Roethlisberger is really clutch. The man made plays for sure at the end of the game, and he was kind of, maybe the clutchness factor for him was kind of a thing, but yeah, he was a chaotic quarterback for sure. He had his ups and downs, and, Tomlin also, it doesn't help when you win so close when on the takeover, because it was his second or third season when he actually was able to get that Super Bowl win. Again, we still support Tomlin, but a 16-year drought. Looking at this again, I understand Pittsburgh fans. I feel you. That's tough. Has a head coach ever had a 16-year drought between Super Bowl victory? I mean, if he wins the Super Bowl next year, that would be 17 years between Super Bowl victories. Has any head coach ever had 17 seasons not between just Super Bowl victories in general, because Belichick maybe, 17 years over the span, but 17 years between victories where your first victory and then the next victory, Super Bowl victory, is 17 years later as a head coach. Who knows, chat? Maybe it's the NFL history of the cycle of how, maybe Tomlin was really early in. Tomlin being hired that early was unheard of. And then McVay, of course, I feel like kind of, unfortunately, the white guy breaking down barriers for once. It was his, when he got hired, and then, his staff and his influence. And, McVay as well, too, is a Shanahan guy. So maybe it was Shanahan that kind of started the whole thing. And maybe it was Tomlin as well, too. But, those guys were even 10 years after the Tomlin run. It feels like those guys were hired when the Tomlin frustrations were starting almost. But, McVay, to compare anyways, he won his Super Bowl with the Rams at 35. So, yeah, he's the youngest, topping Tomlin. But he got hired at 31. So, at least he had a 5-year stretch where, between the hiring and the win, and it's only been now 3 seasons between the wins. So imagine McVay won the Super Bowl in 21, and it's been 3 seasons. So imagine 13 more years where Sean McVay doesn't win a Super Bowl, and he's still on the Los Angeles Rams. That is actually kind of difficult to picture. I'm not going to lie. That's a long, and I guess McVay spending 13 years unsuccessfully as a head coach, not winning Super Bowl, would he just take the head coaching, the TV money at some point? Maybe just go into film But, maybe it's also harder to picture 13 years into the future as well. But regardless, that long of a gap between successes, would be crazy. That'd be 2021. 16 years would be 2036 would be the next time Sean McVay would win a Super Bowl. That's if Tomlin hypothetically wins the Super Bowl next year. So, again, just playing this out from a Steelers fan's perspective, what could you possibly do in the draft this year if you get super aggressive? And maybe this is the type of year where you could actually trade up from that range, because I don't know. Where are they at in the draft right now? They're at 21. So, again, the Rams right now are between them and the Chargers. They haven't played yet. They play tomorrow. They play the Vikings tomorrow. But, trading up from 21 to the number 1 or number 2 overall pick would be a massive, because you think, trading up from 12 to 1 is already crazy from just what the number 2 pick is going to lose in terms of value that year. Obviously, you're getting some of it back overall in the trade, but the value lost in going from 2, but quote unquote, going from 2 to 21 would be kind of crazy. But maybe this draft is different. Luther Burden at 21. You get McMillan, though, as the top receiver in the draft. Same with Hunter. Maybe there is a little bit of a tier gap between Burden and McMillan, but maybe just a smidge. It's the very Brian Thomas McConkey-ish. But maybe this is the year where you could try to trade up and get Cam Ward or Saunders. Oh, excuse me, but I don't know if they're quite going to be able to do that. So even if next year is the year where they finally draft a quarterback that is a hit, it could be 4 or 5 more years before it could be 20 years again before Tomlin wins a Super Bowl. So, yeah, honestly, Chad, I didn't, time just go. Where does it go, Chad? Where does it go? 16 years between Tomlin's Super Bowl victories. You hate to see it. Oh, an ad for spring football. I was like, what are these uniforms? It's like, did the game just end all of a sudden? I thought we were in the third quarter. It's like, did we pivot to some 6 o'clock UFL slate that I didn't realize? But, okay, just an ad. We're good. And I think, we got a Packers score? We have not been locked in on the third quarter. Like, we should be paying attention, chat. The problem is we got also Wizards Thunder on, so that game's not close. So it's just, a real low-key sport. Went from an exciting sports day to a low-key, just better teams, taking care of business. Doesn't feel like much is at stake. I guess, 10-3 again in the third quarter. Philly's, with the coaching and Sirianni, Philly could definitely let the Packers stumble their way into victory. But it's definitely going to be stumbling if it's the Packers winning this one. It's not been smooth so far. So I don't know, if you're Pittsburgh, you just trade up and get Abdul Carter, pair him with TJ Watt, try to just be the most menacing defense. Because it is tough. I don't know what you do at quarterback, but as long as there's uncertainty at quarterback, I guess I don't know why you would move on from Tomlin is my point. You're going to bring in Ben Johnson and give him Russell Wilson? Like, yeah, maybe that really works. And then you go, when we have our quarterback in the future couple years, we're not on that timeline with Tomlin. We actually have our new young player. But, also, who cares? Tomlin's still, 52? Like, you're just going to hire you can go hire another 52-year-old as well and now start the timeline over again. Like, it just doesn't matter. Each season's a new season. You just evaluate every season going forward and go, how big of an upgrade can we... And, you have to take in the micro and the macro. We're trying to talk in business terms here, chat, but, you got to look at the bigger picture. But either way, I don't know. Even with, Flores, we talked about some of the Chargers coordinators, like the Ravens guys, if they get looked at. I don't know if there's somebody in college that's, you going to get Dion if you're Pittsburgh. Like, I don't even know if I would, as much as I would endorse any coach, over, bringing them in over Dion. Like, bring Dion to the Colts. I don't even care if you don't even think that that's a good football. I don't even know if I think that that's a good football move. I mean, maybe he's a better coach than Steichen, but is he a good NFL coach? I don't even know. Who cares? Just bring him into the Colts. I would love to have Dion. Everybody would love to have Dion, but maybe Dion over. Like, I'm just saying, Tomlin is one of the guys. And again, we'll do our coach rankings as well too. But there's just a handful. It would just be a handful, if any, over Tomlin. Obvious, the only, I think, obvious one is Andy Reid. Like, if we're just going, who is without a doubt a better head coach and maybe McVay, but again, I still think it's a maybe. Like, the only really difference between Tomlin and McVay is Tomlin has just had more seasons where his team has, and I'm not saying that they've failed, but they just haven't lived up to the they haven't won the Super Bowl, essentially, is what we're saying. Like McVay could. It's easy. You could easily go on the 13-year run and not get back to the Super Bowl again. If you don't have Mahomes, if you're Andy Reid was dealt with this before he got Mahomes. And Andy Reid's greatness as well, too, is established by the fact that, and McNabb was, borderline Hall of Fame quarterback in his own right. But, he had a run as well, too, where he didn't win a Super Bowl. He was making conference championships, but he didn't have a Super Bowl there for, maybe 20, almost 20 years, 15 years definitely as a head coach. So, Goddard just stiff-arming his way into the end zone. So Hurts' numbers right now, 8 for 15 for 76 and a touchdown before, I'm sure, it updates with that throw. But Goddard taking the man all the way to the end zone. Wow. The stiff arm was not good enough to Derrick Henry just take him just stiff arm him to the ground, but effective enough to at least keep him on the distance, just with jabs. He's not a one-punch knockout power, but he's got enough jabs to at least win the fight. That's what counts. However, whatever method you need to make the stiff arm work, he just had to spam the button that time. Got it to go. Jake Elliott continue to just bum out Eagles fans every time something good seems to be happening. Misses the extra point. Unfortunately, it's maybe not too much of a bummer because they're up by a little bit, but oh man, that's going to bite him. That's the thing about picking the Lions. It's the Lions can make their field goals, man. The Eagles just can't. It is what it is. That's going to bite him at some point. Maybe not in the NFC playoffs, but Super Bowl some point. It's just going to have to matter. You have to be a good football team in all three phases. Bill Belichick mode activated, all three phases. We got to dominate, got to execute, blah, 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 blah. But, it's don't hold it against Tomlin that he won a Super Bowl early instead of later or whatever. But I'm still in, man. Even if we say McVay, let's put McVay on the list above Tomlin as definite. Is there a younger guy that I'm thinking of that, has the stock? Are we going to say that Vrabel, again, you can make the case that you would rather have Vrabel or somebody like that. Even a guy like LaFleur, O'Connell. O'Connell is a great, you could definitely make the case that O'Connell is better than Tomlin, but you can't say it with certainty. You can't say that O'Connell is definitely a better coach than Mike Tomlin. And maybe I'm being too big picture, not looking at the state of the league right now. And again, with what Tomlin's teams are doing, but if Tomlin had Sam Darnold, and maybe O'Connell does something with the offense specifically where that's a different thing. Maybe he's able to elevate a quarterback up in a way, but Tomlin's still able to elevate the whole, he gets a whole roster elevation that, is sort of able to produce a similar result. But, you can't say with certainty at this point that DeMeco Ryans is a better coach than Tomlin. And again, as I'm naming, these are all younger guys. This is sort of the new wave. Maybe this is me just, not embracing the next generation and maybe getting ahead of the curve would be saying, hey, do we need to find this next guy? Tomlin is slipping down the ranks. Do we need to see what's up? But again, even just looking through the playoffs, I'm really going through, that's the real top of the list there. John Harbaugh versus Tomlin. I think I said this before, but just flip the quarterbacks. It's just that simple. You give Tomlin Lamar? Are we even talking about this? Would we not be having the same discussions with Jim Harbaugh that we would be having with the same frustrations? And maybe even Harbaugh doesn't have the same leniency because, I don't know, there's something about that Flacco Super Bowl that maybe even you can put it in a flukiness to it that maybe even makes it a little easier to move. I don't know. Maybe there's just something to that Super Bowl that is a little easier to move on from than maybe what Tomlin was able to build and what the Steelers had there with Roethlisberger and all that stuff. But, I just give the man a chance to either really fall off as a coach and make it apparent that because again, even if you look at it and go, there's certain calls in this game that you wouldn't agree with. There's certain strategic things that Tomlin does that are maybe not in total agree. Like, his conservativeness, the field, I get all that stuff, but most of the time, those aren't, is it conservative? Is it weak moves? Probably at the end of the day, yes. But again, I don't know if it's even affecting overall results. I don't know if, it's still like we see a guy like Andy Reid, play it safe a lot. It's just with Mahomes, maybe the amount of times he has to play it safe gets reduced. And with the defense that they've had as well, like, the defense that they've had can keep them in the same way, similar to Tomlin and the Steelers, but actually having Mahomes to close out the games is like obviously a totally different thing. Give Tomlin Josh Allen. Like, be honest, like Sean McDermott versus Tomlin, to me, that's not even close. With all due, Sean McDermott's a good coach. I would probably defend Sean McDermott more if we were having, because there's been McDermott rumblings, and it's like, no, McDermott, Allen, like this is good, this is working, like keep it up, And the other problem is you see the dynasty and you go, okay, we're not the dynasty as well. You see Mahomes, you see Reid, and you go, we want the team that wins every year, obviously, but not that you shouldn't always strive to be as dominant of a team as possible, but sometimes you definitely have the pieces. Tomlin is a Super Bowl winning head coach. He just doesn't have the pieces right now. He doesn't have or enough pieces, put in place to win. Like McDermott with Allen, like has the pieces to just like keep his job anyways. But, I would still have Tomlin, like I'm saying, over McDermott. You just give Tomlin Allen and he's totally fine. So Steelers fans, I get it. It's a tough time. It's okay. It's okay to be there's going to be emotional outbursts. I get it. But it's like at the end of the day, just remember, and maybe we shouldn't even, maybe we should let you have this time as well too. Has it even been 24 hours since the loss? Like it's still probably pretty tender, but maybe at the end of the day, it's just one of those things. You just need to get it off your chest. You're not actually going to move on from Tomlin. Like I can't actually think that Steelers fans would want to move on from Tomlin, right? The only thing I would think it would be a trade. And then you'd have to know at that point that you would, like, it would have to be, that you're getting, and maybe Ben Johnson is the only guy. Like, it would have to be you're getting Ben Johnson and trading first round picks. Because, who would be the teams that could try? I know we talked about Chicago with that 10th pick. You know what? If the Jets, if they're running back Rodgers at quarterback, if they're bringing back Rodgers at quarterback, again, number 7's like a great spot to just add another lineman or something, add some more defensive pieces. We saw that defense struggle a little bit, maybe more than we would have thought, but it did turn around as well. They also lost Salah, but you bring in Tomlin for the defensive boost with that 7th pick instead. Maybe he's just able to elevate the rest of the team around. It's like, okay, obviously it's not maybe a better quarterback situation for Tomlin specifically, but it's an upgraded coach for the Jets. You have a stalwart guy you definitely know that Rodgers is maybe one more year at best, if that's even on the contract at this point. And, then you're back in a position to go forward and get a young guy after that. But Vegas is not going to give up 6. Like, you'd have to give up next year's first if you're one of those two teams, especially if you're Vegas at 6, who is not going to get a quarterback at this point. So, again, maybe you go out and get your coach. But do you lose out on the chance to get Will Johnson? the fact that it's a Michigan guy on the mock is interesting. Mason Graham is also 5 to the Jags. Like, that's an interesting one, chat, because number 6, so that top 6 right now is, and it's like the popular top 6 of Shador, Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Mason Graham. And I feel like Will Johnson, Will Starks. So maybe it is like kind of a set top 10. Banks and Campbell and McMillan. Because I feel like I kind of, at least at this point, just from, watching the games, getting a vibe of all the guys, pre-YouTube deep dive, I kind of like all of those guys. Not the same amount, but like I feel solid about all those guys as top 10 guys. Like those could all be really good players for sure. Abdul Carter, Mason Graham, Will Johnson. Those guys will definitely be good players. Of course, so will Travis Hunter. Sure, Saunders. They'll all be amazing players, but I feel like that top 10 is like a pretty solid. That feels appropriate for a top 10 picks. But is like taking Will Johnson at quarterback at this point in your franchise enough? Because again, like if the Jets are running back Rodgers, like you would actually maybe need a player there. I get you'd still need a coach. You really wanted Vrabel, but you also need a player probably as well too to really help continue to booster up this team. The Panthers at 8, Canellis and Bryce Young started to get some momentum, so you probably don't want to disrupt that. And again, like McMillan at 8, we just like Sam literally on Friday was just saying that the Panthers might need a couple of receivers to add to this squad, and I don't know if he was meaning like do they do it at 8 with their first round pick, but McMillan is at least there as an option, and at least you're going to add a again maybe a lineman, or maybe Will Johnson is back there, Mason Graham you're adding to this defense as well too if you're able to get some value if one of those guys slides. So I don't know if they're in a position to quite sacrifice that first rounder yet. The top Titans are probably going to take a quarterback or trade down. They're not going to trade away for they're not going to trade away for probably over Callahan as well. They'll probably just run that back one more year. They can make a firing if they have to. But Stefanski, like you're going to make an interdivision move as you're going to trade Tomlin to the Browns. Maybe you would for the number 2 overall pick, but then you're going to move. Is there a 3-teamer where now you're sending Stefanski somewhere else and getting picks back in return? Like, is it Tomlin to the Browns and then Stefanski to the Raiders and 6 to the Browns are back to 6? Steelers up to, like, how does that work? But the Raiders one is actually really interesting looking at that. That is the Saints as well too at 9 as kind of a marketable team. I don't know if you consider I don't know if they go in big market territory for football, but I know they don't for basketball. I know they do for college football. Louisiana anyways. Again, you got Bears, Niners at 12. The Niners at 11, the Cowboys at 12, chat. Could the Cowboys with the 12th overall pick in the draft trade that for Mike Tomlin? Now that, make no mistake, I mean, that sounds like a headline. Like, that sounds fun. That sounds like something that we could really get behind and promote and make takes about. And, the 12th overall pick in the draft, too, like your Pittsburgh, I don't know, are you getting McCarthy back in that deal? And then you're going, okay, at least we now have a stopgap coach. So, I mean, now you're into season with a stopgap coach and a stopgap quarterback, but you've got an extra linebacker and offensive tackle. Like, you go, okay, what did we really gain out of all that? But the idea of the Cowboys bringing in Tomlin is kind of fun. The Dolphins at 13. Is McDaniels gone? Am I crazy, chat? What happened there? Did he get let go? Dolphins, Mike McDaniels fires 2 coaches after missing out. Okay, so it looks like they made some moves in the coaching staff, but yeah, not Mike McDaniels, himself. Still keeping the head coach in place. So, probably not quite. Same with Steichen. Pierce for the Falcons. The Cardinals at 16. Now, see, that's a team that gets interesting. And once you start offering the first-round picks in the future, maybe another future first as well. Or I guess, what was the Sean Payton trade? I know we looked that up already, but I guess I just don't remember. We're going to have to remind ourselves. I want to say first and third, but we know that was also the Devontae Adams trade. Or the Devontae Adams trade was like a first and second, That could have been, first and third easily could have been another trade that I'm just misremembering. But he was traded for... Wait, does it not have the trades listed here? I would have thought it would have had his transactions on this page. But maybe apparently not. But either way, it was like a first and then a future non-first as well. So if you're the Cardinals, you know, giving up, you know, if it would be 2 firsts essentially for Tomlin, if the price was that high, you know, that might be a more interesting one. Okay, do I need to just make a quick Tomlin power ranking? Because I feel like, spoiler alert, there might already be 2 teams that we've highlighted that are going to make this list. But let me just scan through the rest of the teams here and see. Okay, yes. Yes. No, I feel like that's not as good as idea. We'll just make the ranking as we go. So we know the Raiders are on the ranking, and we know the Cardinals are on the ranking. Bengals, no. Seahawks, no. Broncos, no. Bucks? Probably not. I mean, they could definitely win a playoff game tonight. So if they win a playoff game, you know, it's still a veteran team, and you go, is it not a Super Bowl team, but it's still a team you probably have to run back. So no, McVay, no. Harbaugh, no. LaFleur, DeMeco Ryans. Okay, yeah, the good teams with the good coaches. Probably not going to make a move. Unless, can you trade coaches for coaches in the NFL? Let me look that up real quick. Because, of course, you can trade them for picks. You can't trade them for players. But can you trade them for other coaches? The league's procedure involves coach's current team trading his rights to a prospective interest. So, yeah, you can trade a coach for a coach in the NFL. Okay, I know. Oh, here we go. This will have the coaches' trades on it, so it'll at least tell us what. I know, again, we've looked up this Sean Payton trade before, but why not look it up again? In times of need, chat, we just need to remind ourselves. What was the value for Sean Payton? A similar situation as well, too. You know, 1 Super Bowl win, maybe a lot of respect within the league, but didn't necessarily translate into the overall success. Oh, this was an article pre the Sean Payton hype. This was actually by Broncos Wire before the Sean Payton trade. So they were evaluating what it would potentially be to trade for Sean Payton. Crazy how that all worked out. Hopefully you're happy with your guy. But maybe if you could potentially trade coaches for coaches, like it says, the Google AI says yes. Maybe, you know, the Bills, we'll see what happens this year. If they win the Super Bowl with McDermott, then obviously he's safe. But, you know, is there like a McDermott for Tomlin thing that could be interesting? You know, do you feel like Tomlin's an upgrade where it's like McDermott in a third, McDermott in a second, something like that, where McDermott is kind of essentially the first round pick back? You know, could that be an interesting coach for coach type move? Dan Quinn for Mike Tomlin? I feel like if you're Washington, you're definitely making that trade. But I don't know if Pittsburgh would quite feel comfortable with making that move. That feels like a very short term to set yourself back up. Like, you're not bringing in Dan Quinn to be the long-term coach. You're bringing him in because you really want whatever picks Washington's going to give you. But again, they'd have Jaden Daniels and Mike Tomlin. That pick's probably going to be no good. So you're not going to want to necessarily do business with them. So maybe those were the only 2 teams, to be honest. Because is there a playoff team again? I'm looking, chat, help me out. Is there a playoff team that would potentially make a trade for Tomlin? Just to scan back through this list one more time. I don't believe so. Maybe Tampa. Again, maybe Tampa. Maybe Atlanta. So I guess if we were going to make a top 5 list, if to put 5 teams on the list, we'll put the Cowboys at 5, I guess. I guess we did mention the Jets. And the Jags as well, too. Like, do the Jags give up 5? I think the Jags are better off hiring a guy. Hire a young guy and, again, draft at 5 because they kind of are secretly depleted of talent. The Giants, do they do like a day ball? See, that's interesting. that's an interesting concept of like Dayball for Tomlin and then maybe a pick in the future, and the Giants still get to keep their third. And now you have Tomlin and Travis Hunter and Drew Lock, I guess, and make that your combination for next year. But I still think you're pretty, like, Dayball's still pretty good. Oh, Hurts missing a throw down the field. 10 for 17 for 110 and 2 touchdowns. So I guess it really hasn't changed much since that touchdown pass. But, the Saints as well. Okay, let me write these down. Okay, so we said the Cowboys. We'll add the Saints to this list. We'll put those NFC South teams on the list as well. And then I think that might be it. Tomlin and Jaden Daniels is a really fun idea, so I do want to put the Commanders on this list. That is kind of getting me excited a little bit, I'm not going to lie. That would be kind of a fun move. But Dan Quinn has done such a great job this year, I don't know why I would want to try to replace him. But how many teams did I write down? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams? So 5 with an honorable mention. Cowboys honorable mention. I guess, so basically the 3 NFC South teams besides the Panthers, who were just, I guess, so happy with Bryce Young and Dave Canales that they just have to run that back. Let's see it again, baby. Year 3, or I guess year 2 with Canales. But you've got Saints, Bucks, and Falcons. They could all potentially be, I guess, interesting candidates to trade for Tomlin. If the Falcons feel like Morris, if they felt like they could look at that situation and just go, yes, Tomlin is definitely an upgrade from Morris, and we feel like we should be aggressive with this move because the talent that we have is so special. Because, I mean, Penix maybe showed that he could play. If he gets better next year and Bijan is really cooking and Drake London is, mossing guys like he was at the end of the season, that is a dangerous team. And, bringing Arthur Smith back to Atlanta as a coordinator? What is Arthur Smith like in that building with a smaller office? I don't know if he'd be able to fit in. But that would be at least a coaching upgrade to a team that would be interesting. At Tampa, it doesn't excite me, but it does. I feel like it's practical. In New Orleans, same with New Orleans. It would be exciting to have him in New Orleans. They traded Sean Payton away, trade for Mike Tomlin. Just an active viral coach search team, I guess. But yeah, the Cowboys as well too. Definitely the number 1 headline team, as they are the Cowboys. But I guess Raiders and Cardinals are definitely my 2 favorite, for sure. I don't know if it's because of the first 2 that we spotted. But yeah, Raiders and Cardinals could be interesting because the Cardinals maybe kind of like, I guess maybe like those NFC South teams too. Like, could they sacrifice a higher future pick knowing that they're maybe gunning for winning? But if you're the Steelers, you're looking at that, like, especially the Cardinals. That's why I'm maybe thinking why that could be potential for the Steelers side of things if we were making the small case for them. Like, if the Cardinals are giving up future picks and you can go get a guy that you're confident with at coach, like, as, again, as competent as, I guess, Tomlin is able to make those teams, is Murray going to make those teams awesome elite teams where those picks are just going to be, end of the first round? And to be honest, like, NFL first round pick, like, the value is more in the round than it may be in the placement of the round as well, too, where the NBA draft is a smaller draft. Actually, where you're at in the draft is more crucial to the trade value. Obviously, the 1 pick versus the 12 pick is different, the 1 pick versus the 20 pick. But, the 12 pick versus the 20, like, the difference between the 1 pick and the 12 pick is definitely way different between the 12 pick and the 24 pick, for sure. I think that's probably just maybe even stating the obvious, but like that, once you get out of the lottery essentially for the NFL, I feel like the trade value for the picks essentially becomes round by round, or maybe like half round by round. Maybe it's just a little less dramatic, like front half, back half, pause. Woo! But like, you could definitely see the Cardinals having some maybe potentially lower picks, even if you give them Tomlin. But with them having Kyler Murray, you could see them maybe thinking that they would win and want to sacrifice those higher picks. And the Raiders as well, too. Like, that's a team that you could go, maybe there's not some instant winning that takes place if they don't get a quarterback this year. But as a big market team, you go, yes, we accidentally won a couple of games and we're not going to be able to get the young guy that we wanted, but at least we go out, we get a franchise coach, we get a big name offseason acquisition that, maybe a player that's a non-quarterback is going to be a fun move, but until it's a quarterback, it's not going to mean much. So, this is the big offseason acquisition that could at least give Vegas a little bit of a jolt in some way as well. What are you gonna do with the receiver, Chad? What's Aiden O'Connell gonna do with the receiver? What's the defense gonna do with Aiden O'Connell? There's just nothing's gonna go anywhere as long as it's Aiden O'Connell. They're gonna need to make some upgrades. They're gonna need to probably, make that McCarthy trade as well outside of the Tomlin trade, just bringing a whole new core. But yeah, Raiders, Cardinals, Cowboys, or the NFC South. Maybe on the board for Mike Tomlin. I guess the Jets as well. Well, Jets fans will mention you. But I doubt it. But Derrick Henry was awesome as well. And we mentioned the running backs just over the wild card weekend. Is this going to be a playoff stretch of running backs? And maybe that is just going to prove that Mahomes, at the end of the day, quarterback is still the most important position. So Mahomes being the best and most consistent of that, maybe he's just going to win. But all these running backs are, having dominant high-level performances. This is a big game, I think, for Barkley, not just being in the playoffs for the first time and having a chance to, make a run, but just in that sort of vague best running back in the league conversation. Just that, the fake conversations that we make up and have amongst ourselves. Derrick Henry was awesome on Saturday. And Derrick Henry has been awesome, I think, the last 3 games of the regular season. If you go last 3 games of the regular season and today, I think he's averaging almost 160 yards a carry. He's got 8 touchdowns in those 4 games. And it is really reminiscent of the 2019, whatever that conference championship year run was, that he had with Tennessee. And how because those first 2 playoff games were absolutely insane. But the fact that it's end of the season and Derrick Henry is continuing to show that he is unstoppable. It's playoff moments. The offense is revolving around him with, his importance on a team with even a better quarterback as well too. I still totally believe that Lamar can, in his own merit, win a playoff game. And there can be a playoff game where Lamar is making plays and, they're winning the game because of the direct things that he is doing on the field to impact. I fully believe that Lamar can power the Ravens to win a Super Bowl. But, watching Derrick Henry dominate the Steelers on Saturday and watching how that kind of gives you that deja vu for that Titans team, how that operated, this Ravens team is going to win on the back of Derrick Henry. And again, I think that Derrick Henry could have a bad game and they could still win a game. With Lamar Jackson, they're totally capable of doing that. I just don't think that is the way that they're going to win the Super Bowl, however. I think if they're going to win the Super Bowl this year and they're going to make a run, that it's going to be because Derrick Henry is running the ball and because he's awesome. And because even in that Kansas City game that they lost, he was still had a good game, but the Derrick Henry just monster performance, he's going to have an all-time postseason to win him a Super Bowl. I think he might have to have actually 3 or 4 straight 130-yard performances. It's and not to say that if he gets 117 yards in the next game and a touchdown or so and Lamar's awesome that they wouldn't win. I'm just saying, that's still a pretty awesome day. And, he's going to get that 100-plus threshold if they're going to win. If Derrick Henry doesn't get 100 yards in a playoff game, I don't know if this Ravens team is going to win a game. I just think that they're built on the powerhouse of those 2 guys really playing up to par. And I guess maybe that is a 10% I don't trust. I don't know what it is. I just think that Derrick Henry is going to be the one that powers this team to victory if they do. But again, it's Derrick Henry was awesome. Joe Mixon was awesome in that game. James Cook was awesome in the game today against the Broncos. Same with Allen. His numbers look fantastic, but early in that game, especially pulling away and setting the pace, it was James Cook in their run game that was dominating. When James Cook was running the ball, it's like, okay, they're gonna win the game. The fact they don't have to throw the ball, but in a little more league average than the high end performances that we were getting from some of the other guys, but he's still leading the way, and again, still having an above average performance at the running back position. But I mean, not again that it's a hot take or anything, but just to be a prisoner in the moment and just to get consumed in the playoff football, like Derrick Henry is the best running back in the league. It is what it is. I don't know if is that a good time to actually look at the all-pro teams? Let's look at that real quick, because I think, of course, Barkley getting the 2,000-yard threshold, pretty sure he got that spot. I only glanced at these quickly because I wanted to get full reactions. But let's see if we can find the all-pro teams. With the Pro Bowl roster, maybe we'll look at that as a post-credit scene. But the all-pro teams. Okay, we'll just Thanos mode, do it ourselves. Pause. And they were just announced as well, too. I don't think it was today. I thought it was, a couple days ago. Okay, let's see. Hopefully this is just a list that we can go through. But even still, and I guess Barkley had an all-purpose yardage thing as well, too. But Henry was at 1,900 yards this year. I believe this was Henry's highest rushing total. I was going back and looking at the season that he had in Tennessee, in that season where they ended up making the championship. And again, it was just a couple of seasons ago. But looking at how he's finished the regular season this year, I was like, man, he's actually playing better. This is his best 4-game stretch of the regular season so far, or just of the season, has been these last 3 games of the regular season and then this game in the postseason. But for some reason, I was kind of thinking that was also his 2,000-yard season, but it wasn't. Like, he had the 2,000-yard season, and then obviously separately was the year that he made the conference championship. He had like 1,500 yards that year, 16 touchdowns that year compared to, I guess, 16, 17 this year? Yeah, 16 this year. So, he actually had 2,000 yards the next year. And they didn't. Or was 2020 year that they made the conference championship? No, they lost in 2020. But in 2019, he makes that conference championship run. He has, it's of course still the best running back in the league that year, 1,500 yards and 16 touchdowns. But I was kind of combining both of these seasons in my mind as like easily that was the best Tennessee season where he had 2,000 yards and they made the conference championship. But it's kind of like a pick, do you want the 2,000-yard season or do you want the conference championship season? But it's kind of crazy that this Ravens season could actually be his best season overall. And, from again, rushing, he's 100 yards less. And in 100 less games as well, too. So, I guess 10 less yards per game, 13 less yards per game, almost 14 is definitely a significant amount. But, again, the impact that he's having on this Ravens team with the total numbers and the potential ceiling of this Ravens team as well, it's just a little higher. Like, you could make the case that him carrying that Tennessee team as far as he did is just more impressive. Like, Tannehill versus Lamar is obviously, playing with Lamar, but I don't know if this is the most talented Ravens team that they've even had over the last couple of seasons. It's still a really solid Ravens team, and it's still pretty close. Like, they've all been kind of the same over the last couple of years. It's kind of just been, Lamar ascending into his own and continuing to grow as a player, and obviously them adding Henry as well too has been that biggest piece. But again, it's literally just that one piece of them bringing in Henry and a couple offensive linemen here and there. Like, the team has changed a little bit, but this is on pace now to go down as his best season if this team makes a run. If they win a Super Bowl, that's, without a doubt the question, because like I'm saying, if they win a Super Bowl, I could definitely see them winning the Super Bowl and him winning Super Bowl MVP, because he has like 130 some yards and 2 touchdowns, and Lamar is awesome. Yeah. But it's like Henry was on his back and they just, dominate the game, control the pace, run the ball and the clock out at the end. And it'll be him having the better game. But, Lamar, and that would be fun as well, too. Lamar with the season MVP and Derrick Henry with the Super Bowl MVP, like that could be a fun dynamic for how it works out. It would be maybe, and especially if it's like a Lamar doesn't play bad, but it's just a Derrick Henry dominates the game, it maybe could go to the Lamar. Like it wouldn't necessarily be an anti-Lamar thing that he doesn't win a Super Bowl MVP, and maybe the way that it was for Steph, because that would elevate Derrick Henry into a way that, the Finals MVP just couldn't elevate Andre Iguodala, unfortunately. Like, and Derrick Henry just has had a better career in the regular season, and not to say that Iggy didn't have great moments at his point and great peaks as well too, but for the running back position, like Derrick Henry's just a better running back overall than Iguodala. It's a little more wide open as well too. Like the running back versus, you kind of have to compare Iggy versus all players. Like, what do we want to just compare him versus the wings? Like that just kind of gets, into an interesting conversation. Even still, like him in all time versus the forwards is, I still think Derrick Henry, because Derrick Henry's probably, I'm going to be generous to history and say a top 10 running back of all time. Like, but Iggy's not even a top 10. Iggy's not a top 15 forward of all time, I don't think. Like, I guess 15. If I can't even do math, Chad. I can't even do math. 15 times 5 is 60, right? 75? Yeah, so I mean, if there's a top 15 player, that's essentially what the NBA All 75 list is, right? Is the top 15 guys at every position. And, again, Iggy's a great player. Iggy's a Finals MVP. Iggy's deserving of we love Iguodala. Iguodala, I guess we don't want to start blowing up personal spots, but known to be around the Bay in various areas. As of course that's literally as unpersonal as we can get, because he plays in Golden State. So that's just as vague as we can get, but known to be seen around the Bay. Andre Iguodala. That's the word on the street. And maybe by a couple guys in 19, maybe know a spot. But Iggy, unfortunately, as much as IT wants to approach Iggy at that spot, he's not on the All NBA 75 list. And as much as IT would want Iggy to be on the All NBA 75 list after meeting him, he still would just, it is what it is. Like a Super Bowl and a Super Bowl MVP could actually elevate Derrick Henry into a greatness level. And it would be understandable that, Lamar didn't win it this year if that storyline were to play out and they were able to win that. But it would be also crazy that he could have his, just that best potential year, that first year on that team, because, from a legacy standpoint, I guess Manning is a little bit like that, because that Denver run, make no mistake, is in contention for the best, 3 to 4 year stretch that he had over his career. I mean, just statistically, numbers wise, I think it is, but then you go also, playing a little bit later, how the game evolved, what he was doing statistically, maybe in the earlier 2000s, was it a little bit more impressive and then that versus the standing in the league. But I mean, you look at those 3 Denver years, those first 3, where he's 4,600 yards, 5,400 yards, obviously, with the record-breaking season, 4,700 yards. So he's, he's 4,700 yards plus each of those years in 37 plus touchdowns. So just, again, the yardage and the touchdown standpoint, maybe those last 3 years in Denver statistically would match that. Again, maybe that just speaks to the era a little bit of how the numbers continue to go up. But, in the year 2000, he threw for 4,400 yards. From that 2000 to 2003, 04, that stretch, obviously, before he actually won the Super Bowl, there's a reason he was getting the conversation that he was, because he was playing so great in the regular season. It was obvious. He's a great player. And there was some playoff stuff that maybe wasn't matching up. But, you could argue that Denver run was maybe his best 3-year run of his career. And, that hurts as a Colts fan. That hurts as having that Colts fandom in there, because, I mean, he brought us success as well too. Like, we have the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl we have as Colts fans is due to Peyton Manning. and all the success that we've had, since 2000, most of it is he's the greatest quarterback in franchise history. I mean, and maybe, if you want to get to the Unitas conversation as well, too, with some of the impacts of, like, I get it. But still on a legacy ranking, you're not ranking Unitas. I'm not ranking Unitas over Peyton Manning. And make no mistake, I'm probably putting Johnny Unitas up higher on the all-time list than anybody. Because I'm still putting him in my top 5. Like, I'm going, it's going to be like Brady, Mahomes, Manning, and Unitas. Like, that's the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks for all time. But, I'm still not putting Unitas over Manning. Like, Manning is the greatest quarterback in franchise history, and yet there's this Denver thing that just hangs over. It's like, well, wait, why are you spending more time with Denver? What about all the time? What about us? It seems like you're embracing Denver as your former team, and yet you're actually, like, you're not the greatest quarterback in Denver's franchise history. Unfortunately, like, you may have had the best stretch and the best season, but Elway is the best quarterback in franchise history. Like, you are our franchise quarterback, and yet he kind of, because of that run, there's an association with Denver that, there's like a split time thing that just doesn't feel right. And I don't know if Tennessee, I'm sure they do, because, they just didn't, the franchise didn't win a Super Bowl with Henry. So I don't know how their expectations line up with Colts expectations. Not that we're, a big market team that's winning every year. Unfortunately, we got warped as a young person rooting for Peyton Manning, thinking that we were a competitive, making a small market team competitive kind of made us think that we maybe were, a little bit more quote unquote big market than we were, just being a competitive team. So our expectations were a little off. But no, we're a mid-market team like Tennessee, who, unless we get that great quarterback, is not going to be contending every year. So I imagine, like, the Tennessee fans have just this immense love for Derrick Henry, of course. And I imagine even now, like, Colts fans rooting for Manning, it's a little different because the Colts were also playing the Broncos in the playoffs at this time and directly competing against Luck. Like, Tennessee is obviously so awful right now that it's like, yeah, we like, Derrick Henry, please go. Like, you've served your time. And that's the thing as well, too. Like, his clock is maybe ticking a little faster than Barkley's clock. He's a couple years farther along in his career. But if he's still able to achieve this immense success with Baltimore, and again, it's not like he's having a good season and still being like a impactful player, maybe like 8th, 9th best running back in the league, can still make big plays in playoff moments. And, not to say like Leonard Fournette on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but that guy that's like, oh, he's going to elevate in the playoffs and now we're going to get a little juice from him and he's going to have a run. And it was nice that they had Derrick Henry on that team and they couldn't have done it without him. But, if he is actually the dude on this Ravens team, like, not to just say like, hey, don't forget about the Tennessee fans, but, there's not a lot of times where you have that maybe potential thing happen where you build this entire legacy with, because even Tampa, like, yeah, Brady won a Super Bowl in Tampa. That's fun. But he was so, like, I mean, just so much. And, the New England thing maybe it's interesting as well because there's a Belichick thing. But like, him and Kraft are close. Like, I don't think him and Kraft, like, they didn't break up. It was Brady and Belichick that broke up. And unfortunately, Kraft had to make the call there because he was a football guy, trying to win at the end of the day and be competitive. And I'm sure Brady understands that. Kraft just got a little bad intel. But, you still obviously just from at least the outside looking in standpoint, don't associate Brady with Tampa. You think about it for sure, and it's a phase of his career that will be remembered, and it's a part that needs to be brought up because, again, it was successful. But it's, the man's a Patriot. Like, it's Tom Brady. Man played for 20 years for the New England Patriots. The man made us hate the Patriots with every bone in our body. Like, we're just not going to forget that. So, same with the Manning. Like, Manning was a Colt, but now you kind of like, I think there's like a real new like the people in our generation associate Manning with the Broncos. Because again, like, that Super Bowl was like, I mean, that's like the first season that I remember for the NFL. And it's not like I was super young at that stage. I guess the 06 playoffs. Yeah, I kind of would have been a little kid. And do I have maybe some individual memories of some sporting events before that? Sure. But like the first, like, yeah, that's the one is obviously, that early Colts Super Bowl. And, since then, like, them being contending, and again, him playing his best football for our generation growing up would have been in that Denver team, but he still would have had a longer, success stretch with the Colts. But, you think, of course, Montana, the iconic. It just like the guys in history, of course, never were able to make the leap. But then we see it again with Rodgers. Like, this is actually what is supposed to happen when a guy makes a move away from his old team. Like, when you betray your team that you're supposed to be loyal to, you're actually supposed to, the run is not supposed to go well. You're supposed to just have a complete disaster season and go 5-12. Maybe not, tear your knee on the first play of the season, but 5-12 is fine. Couple of extra losses is, I think, a totally acceptable thing to wish on a franchise. But Henry's potentially going into that list of guys now where, and I don't even know what the list of guys is. I'm just thinking of it off the top of my head. But Manning is on that list where, and you look at where he's at too. He was with what he's doing businessly, if that's a word, in the business world. But I think he literally lives in Denver. Sorry, Peyton, not to blow up your spot, but Omaha Productions, all that stuff. Like, I think the man is like a Denver guy, and maybe is he even part owner of the Broncos in a way? Like like he is. You don't even want to say it, but like he's connected to that franchise more than the Colts. It's just what it is. It's just what it is, and I don't know if the tension between the Titans and the Ravens, or the Titans and fans and Henry, is the same way, because again, like, the Colts were still trying to be competitive, so maybe there's a little animosity there where it's like you were trying to win a little bit and didn't think you could do it with me. But you think about where they were at too, like getting Luck in there and being able to reset the franchise in that way. Like, it was absolutely the right move, and Luck was such a, like, you don't even realize, like, that's how much of a can't miss prospect Andrew Luck was, that the idea of getting him was like, you tank for him, and then I guess they didn't trade for him and tank for him. He was injured that season, and then they traded him the season after. But tanking for him and getting that number 1 pick was like, yes, Peyton Manning is obviously going to be a great quarterback. Like, there is still the potential that Peyton is still able to play and play great, but Andrew Luck is going to be so good that it doesn't matter what level Peyton's going to get back to. We have to take Andrew Luck's potential career. And unfortunately, Luck's Colts career was not much longer than Peyton Manning's Broncos career. But regardless, you still look back at it and go, yeah, it was the right move. Like, especially even if it was just, like, Manning wasn't going to hold up on those Colts teams as well. Manning wouldn't have been able to have that success on the Colts. Like, I don't understand why that reason alone, too, is like why there's animosity there, because he needed that Broncos run for his legacy, unfortunately. The Colts, it is what it is. The Colts weren't going to be able to give him what he needed the rest of his career from a legacy standpoint. We had some great players, and we still managed to be a competitive team. Like, we were in the conference championship with Andrew Luck in Deflategate season. But, Luck was doing a different thing physically at the quarterback position that Manning was doing, and maybe the timing thing would have worked. Who knows? But it is always just a little bit, it's just a bummer that it feels like he's more connected to the Broncos than the Colts, because it's like, who's our guy now? If our franchise guy doesn't even really, and it's not that he doesn't associate with the team, like, he'll be there for all the events and stuff, but how often is Peyton, and again, it's not it, he will just say, well, I don't live in Indy, I live in Denver. And to be honest, like, if you had to pick one place to live, sorry, Indy, like, Denver is better probably geographically. It just is what it is. But if you're going to be loyal to the blue-blooded Colts fans, you're going to be loyal to the horseshoe. I'm getting my Michigan fandom crossed with my Colts, but if you're loyal to the horseshoe, you can just stay in Indy. And what happens if they never kick him out? Maybe he just goes to Denver anyways, gets a house out there. But who is Tennessee's main guy? And, we don't want to start, you start getting into some Tennessee, like, rest in peace, Steve McNair as well. It's, of course, a tragedy that you lose another star, like, literally lose him as well. And just, he's not able to be there off the field in any sort of way. But, is Derrick Henry going to have a moment if this team's able to make a run where, in the future, it's like, oh, Derrick Henry, you're actually a Raven. You're buddy with the Ravens. Wait, you only played 2 or 3 seasons with the Ravens, but yeah, you won the Super Bowl. You had the 1,900 yards. your legacy really got solidified over there and you were awesome. Like, it can happen, you know? The Ravens can steal Derrick Henry's heart away from the Titans. It's just what it is. Like, obviously they can't steal like the Titans fans' respect for Derrick Henry, but they can take Derrick Henry's time away from, you know, it seems like which franchise he's most connected to. And especially this era as well. Like, who are the, you know, I don't want to just disrespect the Titans fans, but again, you know, we're not keeping a file of our NFC South opponents just on deck. Oh, geez, wait, is there a bad injury? What just happened? The trainers just had their arms just wrapped around somebody. This a leg? Oh, it was a leg. Luckily, that was a front replay. And I think it was bad. I'm not even going to check the replay chat. We're just going to assume that it was, and if it wasn't, you know, there's really no... The only thing we need to know is that the injury happened anyways. But, I mean, quarterbacks as of recent years, I mean, what? Of course, it's been Tannehill. Like we said, rest in peace, McNair. I guess, yeah, this is going to be a tough way to sort it. Let's see here, chat. Let's just go back to record. Billy Volvek. Kerry Collins. They had some Kerry Collins runs in there. Some Zach Mettenberger. I mean, look at this Tennessee list, chat. This is... Oh, I guess we got it sorted the wrong way. Okay, we'll sort it the right way. Oh, it's because it's going to sort it by percentage? Jeez. Okay, I guess yards is the way to go. So, yeah, Tannehill. There's a Hasselbeck season in there. Some McNair. Mariota, that's right. They drafted Mariota. So, who is, you know, who are your guys? Who are your legends from... Is there... Can we look up, like, All-Pros or Pro Bowlers? Oh, yeah, here we go. Perfect. All-Pro and Pro Bowlers. Really, like, Tennessee, the first player that comes to mind is Cortland Finnegan for fighting Andre Johnson. Like, up until... Derrick Henry, that was it. That was just the number one guy that always stood out. But 4 Pro Bowls with Tennessee. So, yeah, I guess Eddie George, the other running back from the early 2000s. But, of course, Eddie George, if I'm not mistaken, went to Ohio State. So, I don't think he can be considered the greatest Tennessee quarterback. Yeah, he's obviously not the greatest Ravens running back of all time. It's obviously Derrick Henry already. Or Titans running back, sorry. I forgot. We're talking about Titans. But, yeah, Kevin Byard, obviously a couple good seasons. Albert Haynesworth, iconic. Yeah. Yeah, he was solid. But, yeah, you're talking Bruce Matthews, dipping into the 2000s. You know, Earl Campbell. Honestly, I didn't realize how... Sorry, Tennessee. I didn't realize how much you guys lacked in star power over the course of your franchise history. That is crazy. I don't know if we want to start doing draft preview stuff already, but I almost think you kind of have to take the number 1 pick now. Is this the first number 1 pick in franchise history? Let's look that up real quick. History. I mean, just the star power that you could... I mean, Shador, already top 5 most famous Titan. And he hasn't even been on the team yet. Last year they were 7th. Okay, the number 1 pick in 65, 73, and then the last time they got the number 1 overall pick was 1978. So you look at that and go, hopefully that means they're winning all this time. But I think they were just getting the picks that were not number 1. Mariota, of course, number 2. Pastorini, number 3. McNair, number 3. Vince Young, number 3. So this is honestly like a fun group of quarterbacks that they've... I love the college names that they've taken. And they're going to take Shador. I mean, it's going to be the most fun quarterback potential what-if franchise of all time. If they have Shador, Vince Young, Steve McNair, Marcus Mariota. I mean, that's a powerhouse 4 potential of college Heisman candidate potential type guys that what if. Also, they drafted Mike Ditka. Unfortunately, they traded him. Did they? Because he had that rookie season with the Bears. Yeah, he was on the Bears his rookie season. Houston traded Mike Ditka? For what? Why do they not have the trades on here anymore? Maybe they just don't have data from a trade from, 60. Can we get a little... This is an iconic Wikipedia day, chat. Mike Ditka and Fielding H. Yost. Micah Ditka? I don't think of Micah Ditka. Mike Ditka. Are we going for Dick Butkus next? What would you possibly trade a young Mike Ditka for out of the draft? While the Oilers drafted him 8th overall in the first round of the AFL draft, he signed with the Bears, and his presence was immediately felt. Oh, okay. So Houston was in the AFL? So wait, they just got the AFL just listed on here as well? Oh, well, I guess we're looking at the franchise picks, not the draft order from a specific year. We were looking at just that this year, the franchise. So yeah, Tennessee, outside of Derrick Henry this century, like we're saying, nobody to really hang their hat on as a franchise, as that was our moment, that was our guy, that was our star. At least in my opinion, on the outside looking in. Houston fans, or Tennessee fans, obviously if I'm wrong, let me know. But, hopefully, hopefully Henry has, for his sake, you hope he achieves success, but hopefully there's able to remain some kind of connection between him and the Tennessee fans as well. But 2 minutes left in the game. Jordan Love swinging it out for a big gain on 3rd and 19. He picks up the first down. So I don't know if this is going to be just that Jordan Love trying to save face possession. The Packers have been a pretty good save face team this year, I think. They've been in the mix, but we meant to look at the All-Pro team. So let's check that out. I don't totally love the way this is listed. Okay, Lamar at quarterback over Josh Allen. And, I honestly don't think that there is a wrong answer, obviously, for MVP this year between Allen and Lamar. They've both had incredible seasons. I'm sure somebody's made that take. I'm sure the fact that they both are deserving is not an original take, but to me it almost has to be Allen, because if it's Lamar and he loses in the playoffs again, you almost can't even take the risk. I get you want to maybe make sure your legends are up for the task, and let's go, yeah, Lamar, get you the 3rd MVP. You have to win the Super Bowl now. But you can't be just for Lamar's own sake, he can't be a 3-time MVP and then not have a Super Bowl. It might actually hurt his legacy more if he wins another MVP and doesn't win a Super Bowl. And I'm not even joking. Legitimately a 3-time MVP, no Super Bowl. Who else is on that list? All of the other multi-time MVPs are... Mahomes was winning the Super Bowls before he won the MVPs. Brady was winning the Super Bowls before he won the MVPs. I think Rodgers won the Super Bowl before he won the MVPs, and unfortunately for Rodgers, it was, just a Super Bowl. Unless, of course, he's on the... Rodgers just signed with the Chiefs. Honestly, Rodgers, that's my advice. I can't believe I didn't even think about that until right now, but just go sit on the bench for Kansas City. Who honestly cares? Roger, you're literally the most judged player in the NFL. Who cares if they call you bandwagon? They've called you worse. You've actually been the one. You've had so much rhetoric off the court that it doesn't even matter what you do on what your football moves are, Obviously, we're not talking about, locker room, that type, because that starts getting into, off the field types. On the field, where you go, who you want to play for, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you make somebody mad by ring chasing in Kansas City. No, everybody's mad at you anyways. Jets fans were the one fan base last year that was maybe pulling for you because you were hurt, and they thought that you might you were hurt, and they thought that maybe you were able to give them something when you get back. But now that you sucked for them, they don't like you. So, I guess the Kill Tony people, they still got fans, but were they just? We don't even know if they brought him back out in NYC. What would be the response after a 5-12 season? Throw some footballs out in the arena. I don't know if it would go as well this time, but Jim Brown didn't even play in the Super Bowl, so he can't win them. But he had championships, so he won. Brett Favre, of course, won a Super Bowl. Mahomes, Manning, Super Bowl, Montana, Super Bowl, Rodgers, Super Bowl. I'm just trying to think, was there a multi-time MVP that I was going to forget? I probably would have forgotten Favre there for a second because I'm not smart. Even Johnny Unitas got a Super Bowl. I know it may be a little iffy there near the end, but the man did finally win a Super Bowl 5, if I'm not mistaken, with the Colts. I don't even remember exactly what his line was in that game or what kind of a factor he was. But, I mean, you can see that after 67, and, I mean, the Super Bowl started in 66, so they lose, of course, Super Bowl 3 as well, too, which, unfortunately, you know, Unitas and Manning share sort of a similar playoff trajectory there. And, yeah, the championships in 58 and 59, iconic seasons, and why his greatness is forever solidified. But, okay, yeah, he was cooking in the 70 playoffs. I can't believe we doubted him. 478 and 4 touchdowns, led the league that year. But there was also, I guess throughout the season, there was some maybe Earl Morrall stuff. We're going to have to go back and brush up on our 1970s Baltimore Colts history as well. No, yeah, see, in the Super Bowl, he was 3 for 9. So, I mean, 3 for 9 and 2 picks. Make no mistake, it was not the Unitas game, but the 2 games before that, he was putting in the work and was at least able to get him there. You know, the Oakland win was the Unitas performance that really stamped it all. I mean, like Manning as well, too. I mean, you know, that's the thing. It's like, you know, the iconic performance as well, kind of in the playoffs to hang your hat on. The Derrick Henry performance was for some reason bringing out a lot of emotions. I don't know why, but John Constantine Unitas. Wow, I never realized that his nickname was Unitas. And for Henry as well, too, I noticed that they had his nickname on here as Tractor Cedo, which we'll definitely be using going forward. I think we'll probably just know anytime going forward he's only going to be Tractor Cedo. Tractor Cedo carrying the way last night for the Ravens. But yeah, I mean, Steve Young, Kurt Warner, even Kurt Warner, who like literally only played 2 seasons and won 2 MVPs, won in Super Bowl in one of those seasons. So there's just like literally no way Lamar could be a 3-time MVP and not win the Super Bowl this year. And there's absolutely no, you cannot take that risk. 2 Super Bowls is all, he's already made all-time status at 2 MVPs. He doesn't honestly need a third. I get that it needs to be representative of actually the season, but like, let's get, Josh Allen's been awesome the last couple of years too. I'm not like let's be honest. I am a socialist award giver. I like spreading the wealth around. I'll give the tie to the new guy for sure. Tie to the new guy is a rule in the Rem and Sam award bracket. But if Lamar is first team All-Pro and Josh Allen is MVP, and I guess, you know, we'll know more of the MVP the night before the Super Bowl, so we'll even know, you know, whether or not one of those guys is in or out beforehand. But if that's the way it works out, then like that's great. And, you know, if Lamar wins the Super Bowl this year, then maybe it's like, you know, should we have taken the chance? But I don't know. To me, I guess I trust Lamar, but apparently not that much. He can't, I just, for his own legacy's sake, people would look at him with such a side eye. 3 MVPs, that he would be looked at as such a fraud. And not, I don't know if fraud's the right word, but you get what we're trying to say. It's like, I don't even know if winning 1 Super Bowl would make up for mistakes. It probably would, but you know, it would just be a lot to overcome at that point. Barkley for the running back, like we're saying, we get it, but just maybe Henry is the guy we take at this point after watching the playoffs. But are you going to have a full Ravens backfield? A full Bush Ravens? You know, would be crazy. Brock Bowers, year 1, tight end, first team All-Pro, already established. So I guess it's just, you know, how long is the Mike Evans run going to go for? Pause. Like, did I say Mike Evans? I meant Brock Bowers. I was thinking about Mike Evans because Mike Evans, of course, just tied Jerry Rice with most 1,000-yard seasons to start your career. So I was thinking, you know, is Brock Bowers going to have that kind of Mike Evans type run? But I feel like, you know, like for receivers, like you can have a great statistical run like Mike Evans. And, you know, again, speaking like top 15 of all time, like I don't think Mike Evans is a top 15 receiver. Maybe you'd have to go back and look. Like maybe I'm not giving Mike Evans his due credit. But, I mean, just think of the receivers right now that are I mean, I know we just went through the Hall of Fame a couple episodes ago. Last week we went through the Hall of Fame. I wish I could remember who was all nominated for the Hall of Fame. But but I know we went through that list, and there are receivers on that list that are just like, well, I guess maybe we just leave this guy out because there are so many receivers here. But Evans is 12,000 yards, 105 touchdowns, and 11 straight seasons of 1,000 yards. Like, it's absolutely crazy production. But he's obviously not even getting close to. And with all due respect to Mike Evans, what Jerry Rice was putting up for stats. But in terms of tight ends, like, obviously what Gonzalez was doing over the course of his career, and the longevity of Gonzalez's career, the numbers are outstanding and crazy impressive. The peaks that kind of Gronk hit, just in terms of that dominance, is at least the peak for guys that we've seen, at least for guys in our life. So, like, what'll be the mix for Brock Bowers for that? Can he be and not that I don't think he does, unfortunately. And Gronk is a 101. Like, I don't think he possesses the physicality of Gronk, but he is an insanely physical guy. Like, I don't remember exactly how. I'm sure all tight ends are tough. We're not going to sit here and question Tony Gonzalez's toughness, but I just did he get that, like, finesse label? Was he that Gronk, like that that more gritty type guy? But of course he got that 15,000 yards. You pile enough 800, you put enough 8s on top of each other, and I guess you get a 15. Chat, is that a rule that we live by? Make no mistake, it might be, but that's how Tony Gonzalez made a living. That's how a lot of us make a living. Combining 8s is not bad either. Make no mistake, a couple 8s is good. That's a career night that we'll take. But Bowers off to a much hotter start than Tony Gonzalez, of course, with the 368. But he did get to 1,200 there pretty quick. And I don't think Brock Bowers was at 1,200, right? He was maybe 11. He was just over Ditka. Ditka was just over 1,000, so I think he was just over. Oh, he was almost at 1,200 first year. Yeah, 1194, 5 touchdowns. So the start of is this now the new greatest tight end in NFL history? Yeah, I mean, you never know, chat. It's the single best numbers first season. So, I mean, that's a pretty good start to get off the right foot with. I guess, is it too early to start doing what the legacy to Chase is? But it's just a different thing than receiver, because I don't know if you even need to get to, like, the Gonzalez numbers to match what he did. What was he doing from a 14 Pro Bowls, 6 All-Pros is crazy. 14 Pro Bowls is crazy. But Brock Bowers is there after one season. So it's one of those positions as well, too, where if you are, if you're putting up you can be a top 3 guy at that position for a long time. Like, the way it cycles out and just the overall depth, you can be slipping onto these all-pro teams for sure. Again, not to diminish Brock. I'm just saying, like, Brock Bowers, could he be a 14-time Pro Bowler? Maybe, chat. 1 down, 13 to go for our guy Brock. But, of course, there was no surprise there. He was the best tight end in the league. The receivers, from a stats standpoint, it kind of had to be Chase and Jefferson. But that's crazy. Like we're saying, the 2 number 1 rookies and the 2 number 1, like, established guys are both LSU guys with Chase and Jefferson. And, we'll get into our playoff ranking, or our player ranking, like we're saying, in a couple weeks. I think if we're just ranking the players depending on how we do the criteria as well, too, have to figure that out. Because it could change the ranking. Like, if it's just guys that I want on the team on the field for, a play, a season, like a stretch, whatever. Like, if it's just guys that I just want on the field, then, guys I think like A.J. Brown and, of course, Nico Collins and Puka Nacua are definitely in the mix, to me, against Jefferson and Chase for as amazing of seasons that they had. Like, the games that those guys, the physicality and the blocking and some of the versatility that they're showing and the value that brings to the offense, like, it's definitely additive in another way as well, too, that, having extra yards that maybe that Jefferson can have is additive as well. But for games played, because a lot of those guys miss time. So for games played and for the numbers, like the receiver position, totally makes sense. Offensive line looks good to us, chat. I think they'd make sure that we are well protected. But two Chiefs, of course. Denver, Sewell for Detroit, in Wirf. So no Trent Williams, who I think would be another name recognition guy. But again, some injuries maybe holding him back. But Sewell and Wirfs, I mean, you're not going to complain about them, having them at tackle. That's probably maybe 2 and 3 right behind Trent Williams, of course. Garrett, still first team All-Pro, still a stud. Hendrickson just decided to lead the league in sacks again this year. 17.5 sacks. And is he kind of in a 15 sack run now? What did he do last year, chat? And shout out to Philly getting the win. I don't know if we already said that. Back-to-back years, 17.5 sacks. Wow. I feel like we could do a little history deep dive on that and figure out how rare that is. But, I'm sure that's J.J. Watt. What other white pass rushers have done that? J.J. Watt, T.J. Watt, and Nick Bosa? Mark Gastineau? Luckily he stopped short of Gastineau because he didn't want to catch those hands. But it was enough this year to lead the league. 17.5, apparently not last year. Oh, wait, All-Pro team was over here. And, of course, Hutchinson got hurt as well. So Hutchinson was probably a lock for this before he got hurt. But unfortunately not able to make it. Cam Hayward and Chris Jones. I mean, I feel like the defensive line was just like, that's pretty chalk. Garrett and Chris Jones, and then Hayward and Hendrickson's just the sack leader. Like, they're keeping it easy this year for the voters because, well, again, we'll get into the player rankings. Like, you can't be mad that you're going to call Garrett, especially from an impact, like, number 1 or, number 2 pass rusher in the league. Like, Garrett still probably is the best pass rusher in the league. So it's still, like, that pedigree, most talented, most terrifying, like, status guy and the stats guy. Like, give them both a spot. That makes sense. But if you're just going stat guy, I think Garrett was a couple of spots down on the sack list this year. Like TJ Watt, no love for TJ Watt. Can we just run a quick stat sort here? Well, it may not do it for us. It'll go at some point. Oh, nope, not fumble yardage. Shout out to Raekwon Jenkins, though. Rayshawn Jenkins. My bad. 102-yard fumble return. I missed that. Oh, no, Garrett was second. My bad. I forgot. I guess it was just the gap between. I guess I was more thinking when I looked at that, oh, man, Hendrickson was that much above Garrett. That's what it was, not that Garrett was. That's what Garrett was down from. Hendrickson, 3.5 sacks over the course of the year, not that Garrett, I guess, was down on the list. But you got Benito and Kyle Van Noy and Greenard as your 2, 3, and 4. Amazing seasons, amazing impact players, but they just don't have the name recognition yet, I think, to, build a case above Garrett, even if Benito was a half a sack behind him. And the Denver defense, of course, and defensive line, like that was the number 1 pressure defensive line in the years. So, oh, do they just have the All-Pro teams on here already? Of course, it's been a couple days. I should have known. Yeah, here we go. Oh, so they got the second teams on here. So, yeah, of course, Allen's going to be second team. Henry's going to be second team. Yeah, A.J. Brown in 13 games doesn't even matter, second team. But CeeDee Lamb and McLaurin also second team. So, no Brian Thomas on second team. No Malik Neighbors. I know Neighbors missed some time, but Brian played. Mr. Thomas played all the games. Is this just going to be comparing the stats leaders to the awards? I mean, that's usually what it is. But, of course, Washington as well, too, for the turnaround that they had this year. And for making the playoffs, for being one of the better teams in the league. Got to reward somebody in that category. But, yeah, Amon-Ra second in receptions. Drake London, 1,200 yards as well, too. Yeah, CeeDee Lamb, it's a great season. 15 games play, 1194, same as Brock Bowers, 6 touchdowns, 101 on the catches. So maybe you just go, 101 on catches is honestly a little bit higher than I thought. And definitely one of the more, prominent figures of the year when it comes to receiving the ball. But, you know, with what the Cowboys were doing this year, do you need to like reward CeeDee Lamb? I mean, yeah, you could reward CeeDee Lamb, but like McLaurin feels like you're putting him on there a little bit for what the Commanders were able to accomplish. Because, like, even look at McConkey's 16 games. He had better stats than McLaurin did. Where is Puka? I guess Puka was just way too far down, unfortunately, yeah. But what if we go, like, per game here? And check out per game. Jamar, and, yeah, see, Jefferson's, like, at 90 a game. Like, you're not going to put A.J. Brown and Nico, 12 games played, not quite. You know, Nico's 12 games over CeeDee Lamb's 15 games. I guess the Texans were, again, just kind of a bland team this year. Godwin, 7 games played. So, you know, he was on pace when he was out there. Malik Neighbors, of course, we know he was already an all-pro level talent this year anyways. Okay. So, I mean, you can't be too upset about any of that stuff. I mean, and Brian Thomas is definitely in the Pro Bowl, right? Can we get this back up? They didn't snub him out of everything. Where'd our boy Brian Thomas go? Why can't we see his name here, chat? No, so they just left him out of everything. That's unfortunate. Jerry Jeudy in the Pro Bowl. I guess they said, wait your turn, bud. Jerry Judy's going in first. Pause. Whoa. Brian Thomas with the Skip Bayless. It's my turn. But Thomas also had 10 touchdowns as well, too. Like, there's 4 guys this year with double-digit touchdowns as receivers. And the other 3 were on first team. So, yeah, I will actually say that is a little bit of a bummer that Brian Thomas is not on. But, again, you know, you're not going to be too mad that I guess in what we're talking second team, like, you're not going to put Brian Thomas on first team. So we're arguing second team All-Pro, which, like, half goes on your resume anyways. It's one of those things. It just depends on the business who counts second team All-Pros as legit or not. But anyways, to round out the defensive teams, Surtain and Stingley. I was going to say the same draft class, but that was Surtain and J.C. Horn, of course. Marlon Humphrey in the slot. Shout out. But Stingley also making a first-team All-Pro is crazy because now him and Sauce both have first-team All-Pro appearances. Was Sauce even second-team this year? McDuffie was second-team again. Derwin James, second-team All-Pro. I feel like he's kind of been out of the All-Pro mix the last couple of seasons. So it's good to see him back. Has he even made a first-team at any point? Okay, he did once. Yeah, his first season. Second team a couple of years ago. But yeah, there's been injuries in there as well too. And I guess, you know, second team on 14 games played. So a full season this year and a full season of high-level production. You love to see it as Derwin James kind of enters his prime. But this is a couple of seasons now for McDuffie. Was he first team All-Pro last year? Or yeah, last year was his second season. So 2 full seasons as a starter and 2 seasons where he is a top, you know, I guess I don't know how many defensive backs are on here, but top 4 or 5 cornerback in the league. You know, 1, 2, 3 plus, I guess 6 cornerbacks. So 2 years in a row, he's a top 6 cornerback in the league. I mean, you could make it. I guess Surtain is probably now officially taken back the best cornerback spot because Sauce did have it there for like peak Sauce is probably still maybe the most, you know, maybe the best season that any of these guys have had so far. But Surtain now, yeah, 2 first-team All-Pros in 3 years. Unfortunately, just a down year last year. It is what it is. But still in the Pro Bowl, of course, still in the mix. So he's probably taken that belt officially. I guess again we'll have to determine how we're going to do our positional rankings and if he's still the number 1 guy, because Stingley was really awesome this year as well, and like just that McDuffie consistency, like that's pretty close. He might be high up on that list too. But Stingley matching Sauce after that first season, because again, Sauce like first team All-Pro in his first season is crazy. Like you're saying, McDuffie and was Surtain first team All-Pro right away? Again, I forget. But yeah, 2 seasons of injuries as well too, so you're not even really getting him out there to even have a chance to impact. It's just, and Sauce is out there just being awesome 2 years in a row. Like, it's just a lot to watch and comprehend as a Texans fan. But Stingley's back. Stingley's good to go. Stingley's locked down. He's one of the best corners in the league. So I love that dynamic is, and I love that that's a battle too. I love it when guys are battling it out with. We don't want to see we want to see Sauce obviously be good, but we don't want to see him wipe down Derek Stingley. We want to see Derek Stingley be good, and we want to see them both win and one. We want to see one better the other just because of what the other was able to achieve. I guess if Sauce at some point just drops a diss track on Stingley and it just totally eviscerates him, then it is what it is. But in terms of the play, Stingley, you love to see him back at the top of his game. Shout out to Andrew DePaula, the long snapper, just sneaking him in there. Pause. Kirby Joseph and Xavier McKinney as defensive backs. Why is it not scrolling down? There we go. Yeah, McKinney as well too was another. Was he a first-round draft pick, or was he a second-round draft pick? But I've always liked McKinney, so okay, he was a second-round pick. So I'm glad that he was finally able to have a breakout year this year, of course, especially in the second half of the year. But 4 years in, off that rookie contract, the Giants giving him up is the Giants having two former first-team All-Pros on here is definitely tough with McKinney and McKinney and Saquon. But so goes life. Kyle Hamilton and Budda Baker on the second team. Chris Boswell over Aubrey. I mean, Boswell was better than Aubrey this year. It is what it is. Aubrey missed some kicks. I mean, Aubrey still has the best leg in the league. And if you need to go for distance, you're still taking Aubrey over anybody maybe. But Boswell consistency was definitely there. And we went through the second team edge quickly. Benito was on second team. Okay, shout out. Good. Love to see it. That's exactly where he should be. Van Ginkel as well. I mean, yeah, he had 2 or 3 touchdowns this year as the edge. So, I mean, that's impressive. Got to kind of throw him on the list as well. And TJ Watt, of course, making the team. So, shout out to, of course, the 2024 NFL All-Pros. They get a shout out from the Rem and Sam pod. They get to be All-Pros, but they get a thumbs up from your boys. So, I'm sure that's the last thing that they needed to, how do they save that? Do they just keep it in their hearts, or do they snap a picture of this moment and put it in the trophy case? Shout out, guys. Great job. But shout out to the Eagles as well, too. I mean, the other game is probably already underway. I can't believe we're just rambling on about all-pro teams and not keeping up with the actual football. The playoff football. Do we have a start? Okay, I think we're good to go. Of course, this will probably need to take a couple of seconds to fire up, and we honestly could just turn on Peacock and just start watching, but looks like okay, Collinsworth, the flag is on the field. The flag is on the field. Collinsworth is still giving us some pregame analysis from the booth. So we still have time to go watch the game. Thank you guys for jumping on with us tonight. We will be back later in the week. Of course, you can follow us on socials at Rem and Sam Podcast. We're on Instagram. There's a couple the countdown, the 12 days of TikTok. I don't know if we need to make a theme song and do GIFs or whatever, but the 12 days of TikTok, I don't know if it's actually 12 days left, maybe less. It's close. I think we're still over there. You can follow us. We're on the other platforms, though, that aren't going away, so you can follow us over there as well. 2, follow us here on YouTube if you haven't. The podcast versions are available on Spotify, Apple, everywhere else as well. So, as always, of course, thank you guys. We appreciate when you guys jump on and hang out with us so much, and we look forward to being back, of course, like I said, later in the week. So stay tuned and have a good night.